And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, November 25th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. We got a big one here. 13 games ahead of us, including, it's 12?
Well, there's one that isn't on the slate, the Minnesota game.
Yeah, that's 14.
Oh, okay.
So there's 13 games today. Thanks for cutting into my intro, though, just so you could be wrong. That's fantastic.
Blame Greg. He confused me this morning.
Well, that's what happens when you do shows with guys that aren't me. All of the wrong information comes out. We have 8 games, I believe, locking at 8 o'clock. That should be a real blast for everyone in that 7:30 to 8 o'clock window. It's going to be fun. We got a lot to talk about, tons to break down. I can't go too long in this one because it's going to take us a while to break it all down. So make sure you guys hit that like button when you get in the door, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how is our newest United States soccer fan doing?
Yeah, really crushed because we didn't win. But yeah, no, I told you I mildly enjoyed it, especially for a game that featured no goals. It was fun having something to root for. I watched it with one of my friends that grew up playing soccer, so he could actually like explain to me what I was watching, which was nice. But yeah, like I'll probably go watch them play on Tuesday because they play it too. It was enjoyable enough. I would have preferred it be any other sport, but you know,
Any other sport?
most other sports.
I was going to say, like, I'm pretty sure that if this was the WNBA, you're picking soccer.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, just checking.
I mean, I'd probably rather watch women's Olympic basketball than the World Cup.
That's, oh my God, it's such a bad take. It's such a bad
I mean,
take.
it's a probably, but like, I understand basketball. I don't know what I'm watching when I watch soccer.
What do you mean? You know exactly what you're watching. You know the point of the game. What part is confusing? Kick ball in net. Don't use
Well,
your
that
hands.
doesn't happen. So obviously, there's other like intricacies and strategy that I just don't understand. I don't know what a foul is. I don't know. Did
What do you
not
mean you
know.
don't know what a
And
foul is?
I don't know, and am completely against this bullshit where somebody gets hurt, so they kick it out of bounds and then give it back to the other team. Like that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
The more you watch, the more you're okay with that.
Like,
As
imagine if in hockey somebody breaks their stick and the other team just flips it into the stands.
It's different because it happens so frequently here.
Well, maybe if they stopped doing that, you would stop flopping all the time and people wouldn't get these fake injuries.
They're not fake. They're just temporary. That's the problem.
Yeah, it'd be a much better.
They are not like there's essentially nothing on each other's shins, and they're just bringing them together.
I could like
or metal spikes to the toes.
Yeah, everything that happened today, you could tell that it was an actual like that hurt really bad. But
yeah,
yeah, also dumbest thing I've ever seen.
It's one of those things where like that used to be a thought process to me, and it's like, oh, all these guys are flopping, and then you think about just like rubbing metal cleats down someone's shin, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna give that guy 45 seconds to like not be in excruciating pain. It goes away, then you're okay, but like for that brief moment, it feels like somebody shot you in the leg.
Yeah, no, like I could tell today that it was legit stuff. Except for I think there was one time that somebody on England pretended to get hit in the face that absolutely did not get hit in the face.
But. Yeah, I mean, but like. That's just as bad as any of the NBA nonsense you see.
Yeah, but in the NBA, you go score. You don't give it back.
Right. Well, they're never giving it. They're never kicking it out of play in any sort of advantage situation. It's only like on the if it you clean somebody out, you're on the opposite side. Like if you're in your final third, you're playing on and you're letting that dude writhe in pain. If it's on the opposite third where like there's no threat to immediately score, that's when they're taking that time.
Okay. That makes more sense, I guess.
Yeah, it's more often than not, your own crowd is booing you for doing it and they want you to go, even if you're 90 from the goal. Like it's just a courtesy when there's no quick advantage. Because like playing with 10 men happens all the time. You can just let that dude writhe around in pain for like a minute and it doesn't really affect your chances of actually trying to score. So there you go. Learning a little bit. Do you want to learn some more? I could explain the rest of the slate to you too.
You mean the rest of the basketball slate or the rest of how you didn't play the right center back on FanDuel?
I will never be upset. I'm upset about the way that soccer went. However, I will never be upset that I didn't have Harry Maguire because Manchester United can suck me and I hate them all.
I will say the thing that is making me the most happy about soccer is I'm just really enjoying how mad chat's getting.
What's
I
chat mad
never
about?
wanted
I'm
to
not
talk
reading.
soccer more than I do right now.
The referee was terrible. England should have been booked at least twice in the first half. Don't think it matters all that much, but gross. All right, you ready to do this?
Yeah.
Philadelphia 76ers, 2-point dogs in Orlando, 213 total in this one. For Philly, it's the same thing we've basically had. No Harden, no Maxey, no Embiid, no Matisse Thybulle, no Jaden Springer or Michael Foster if those things matter. And just in case, because this was something that I know that we've mentioned, Saban Lee is with the G League team. Okay. So we don't have to worry about him sneaking in and being a backup point guard. So I think we're just going to do the same thing that we've been doing, although these prices are starting to get to a problematic point. Shake Milton is the one that isn't, though. 17% owned on DK, 13% owned on FanDuel. To me, he's pretty clearly the best guy from Philly, but what do you want to do with the rest of these guys?
Yeah, I agree. I think Milton at his respective salary looks the best. 39 minutes last game. You got 37 from Melton. You got 37.5 from Harris. Milton just seems like he's a little bit more underpriced than the rest of them. Melton and Harris both look fine. Like, there's still ceilings there. They're going to have a ton of usage. They're going to play a lot of minutes, but I think for the most part, the pricing has adjusted and is correct. Shake Milton at 6K flat is the one that I think really stands out, though.
Yeah, that price just looks fantastic to me. I'm a little surprised, maybe not surprised, but I expected a little bit more ownership going to Tobias Harris, but I guess 8K is just sort of what it should be with these guys out. Maybe I just want Tobias Harris to be playing up to his contract when those guys aren't on the floor, but I kind of like him in GPPs. I feel like he's going a little underrepresented. Nothing too crazy, but a guy that I'd like to be over on if he's 5% owned on FanDuel. Is there anything else here? Are you now that the center prices are where they are? I don't think that we're messing around with Harrell and Reed, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough to want to get there. Though, like if you were looking for a case to make for playing them in tournaments, it's that there's still going to be some percentage of games where Paul Reed plays 28 minutes or Montrezl Harrell plays 28 minutes, but more often than not, I expect it to be a pretty even split. We did see them close the last game with the lineup that I know you and me had been expecting to be their closing lineup previously with PJ Tucker at the 5. So basically you got 44 minutes from those guys. You got 48 the game before that. More often than not, it's going to be pretty much split. You're going to get some other, you're going to get some games where one of them plays really well and just stays on the floor, or one of them gets in foul trouble and the other one gets more minutes. But they're both priced now to where if you get 22 minutes from them, you're not really going to want them in your lineups. So you're kind of just hoping to get, that 28-minute game, but there's other spots that you can target that are the exact same now for cheaper too. So it makes it pretty unappealing, I think, to get to either guy. Anything
you want to touch on now for the rest of Philly?
No, I think it's just Milton. Milton is like the closest thing to a priority. He's the only guy on DraftKings getting double-digit ownership. Harris is second at 7%. Milton's getting 3%. Yeah, I don't think there's a ton here outside of 6K Milton.
Okay. We'll go to the Orlando side where they're starting to get some guys back, and they also have some guys that are hanging in the balance. I don't know how much we could actually talk about this one. This one's probably more of a live before lock show unless we get it any updates soon. Cole Anthony should be back soon, but he is still out. Fultz and Isaac's still out, but Jalen Suggs not on the injury report. Paolo Banchero back for the first time in like weeks. But we've got a Q tag on Wendell Carter Jr. and a Q tag on Chuma Okeke. Mo Wagner also no longer injured. There's no ownership coming into anybody from Orlando. How much does this news matter with Paolo back? Are we just basically looking at Mo Bamba? Because he's already 6,400. I just don't know if Orlando's ever going to look any good today.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. I think the news matters the most in the sense that it affects Mo Bamba. If you take Carter out, you're probably getting Bamba starting. And if you take Okeke out too, it's very likely that Bamba's starting and should still play pretty significant minutes. But I do think Mo Wagner being back is at least worth a mention, just because that's one front court body that could sort of ruin the rotations. It's already, riskier going to Bamba now than it was when Banchero was out, just because that's a guy that's playing, mid-30s minutes typically. And it really, like, if he's out and Carter's out, then you just know Bamba's going to get those minutes. Prior to Banchero's injury, you weren't really getting Bamba playing significant minutes either. So I think that Bamba, if Carter is out, if Okeke's out, if Bamba's starting, he's at least worthy of considering in tournaments because he is a good point per minute guy and conceivably could play 30 plus minutes. But he's the only guy that I'm really interested in. Banchero's expensive. I don't really want to get there. Wagner, Bowl, Suggs, Carter are all priced for Banchero to be out at this point. So I think this is one of the least appealing teams on the slate.
I have nothing else to add. Make sure you're paying attention to Live Before Lock, though, for that news coming in, because it could open up at least a little bit. That could be 50 minutes that need to be accounted for at the very least. We're moving on to the only 7:30 game. That would be the Portland Trailblazers, 3.5-point dogs in New York, 218 total for Portland. Obviously, still without Damian Lillard, no Gary Payton or Keon Johnson. Q tag on Drew Eubanks. We've got Anthony Simons, 20% owned on DraftKings, just 5 on FanDuel, where he's $700 more expensive. Yusuf Nurkic, on the other hand, is getting the Simons ownership from DK on FanDuel, but not really getting it on DraftKings. And then Justice Winslow, 4,100 on DK, 4,400 on FanDuel, is just getting 15% ownership on both sites. Where are you going here for Portland? Because the guy that I think is pretty interesting to me is not really pulling any ownership on DK.
Oh, Nurkic?
I was going to say Jeremy Grant.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think Jeremy Grant's fine. 4% is probably a little bit low. I really like Nurkic. FanDuel, like you said, he's getting more ownership. He's 6,100. He was still in my tournament plays video earlier. But 6,800 on DraftKings, I think, is pretty appealing too, especially if Eubanks were to sit. If Eubanks is in, I still think Nurkic looks good. He's averaging around 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Lillard on the floor this year, 1.23, 25% usage rate. But if Eubanks is out, I think it's likely that you can project even a couple more minutes on top of the extra minutes that you can project with Lillard being out. The reason we've talked about it before, the reason you can project a couple extra minutes for Nurkic if Lillard is out is that it makes it more likely that Nurkic is in the closing lineup because Justice Winslow will be in there in place of Dame instead of in place of Nurk. And then you also get the increased production. If you take Eubanks out too, though, we've seen this, you see this in most spots where if there is just a two-man center rotation where they are splitting 48 minutes in some form, when you take out the backup, typically you're getting a couple extra minutes for that starter. They're not typically going to just grab, Walker or Watford or whoever and just throw them in there for the same minutes that they were giving Eubanks. So I do think that it makes Nurkic look a little bit better. If Eubanks is out, I think he looks good with Lillard out anyway. So interested in him on both sites. I think he's going a little bit under-owned on DraftKings in particular. Simons is averaging 1.12 DraftKings points per minute and about 37 minutes per game without Lillard, so he's going to look good. I like Winslow. He started last game, played about 28 minutes, didn't close because the game got out of hand. He's averaging about 30 minutes per game and about 0.95 DraftKings points per minute in his 4 starts without Lillard, so I think he looks good. And then after that with Jeremy Grant, I think he's fine. I just don't think that he's quite as good. He's at 0.97 DraftKings points per minute without Lillard this year. Should give you somewhere between 35 and 37 minutes.
Yeah. I was just a little surprised to see 4.5. Just looked good to me. Well, he's 1% owned on FanDuel, a couple $100 more expensive, but the type of guy where he's just out there so long and willing to take the shot. Not like the only priority for me on the FanDuel side would be Nurk and Winslow, 6,100 and 4,400. The Simons price at 8,300 doesn't make him a priority at all. I think Simons is a little over-owned on DraftKings, but obviously looks pretty good at 7,600 with no Dame. Anything else for Portland? Do we want to dig in at all on the out? If Eubanks is out, Nurkic, obviously, we bump him up another minute or so, another maybe 2. Looks just fantastic. But is there anything else? It doesn't seem like we can go to Shaden Sharp or Little or Watford or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much just the starters. And okay. Josh Hart of those 5 is the least appealing, I think.
All right. For the Knicks, other than their center rotation, this is mostly easy to handle, but we do have a Q tag on Cam Reddish, on Derrick Rose, and on Mitchell Robinson. They played 3 centers this most recent game and still didn't play all 48 minutes of those centers, which was something, at least. No one getting any ownership here. RJ Barrett at 8.5 on DK. We see Jalen Brunson get to 11 on FanDuel. I'm a little surprised to see that even exist. Give me a little bit of Cam Reddish if he plays as a crap value option, but I think the Knicks look awful.
Yeah, I don't think there's much here. To me, the most appealing thing will be if Cam Reddish sits and you get a $3,500 Quentin Grimes starting with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. You're probably getting mid-30s in minutes from him. It'll make him look like a pretty good value. If it's Reddish, I agree with you. He's going to play a lot of minutes and could be fine, but I don't think he's a particularly good play. The center rotation, absolute garbage, really, whether Robinson's in or not. The way I, kind of talked about it in my injury report video was if Robinson's out, then you do get a higher chance of Hartenstein or Sims having success since there's only two of them. But I mean, we've had a couple of weeks now where Robinson's out and you pretty much haven't needed those guys typically. So there's not going to be a lot to like regardless. But I think especially if Robinson and Reddish are in, I have basically nothing. Jalen Brunson, 7,300. You could maybe project an extra minute or two if Derrick Rose sits. But last game, you still only saw 34 minutes for Brunson. You had McBride enter the rotation and play like 14 and a half minutes. So I don't really think there's much from the Knicks.
I think it's incredible that they went like 16, 16, and 16 to the centers on Sunday. Even Toppin got 16. Like, it's just Tibbs had a very specific plan in mind. He must have had like a dream about the number 16 or something.
Yeah, it still only got 33 minutes from Randall too.
I know. Anything else for the Knicks?
RJ Barrett plays a lot. I kind of forgot him just because he's been so bad this year, but he's actually probably the easiest Knick to get to on DraftKings.
Yeah, highest owned as of this. I mean, the only two guys that aren't getting no ownership are Barrett and Brunson. Everybody else is at less than 1%, which is pretty telling. This game's a little bit different, though. Sacramento Kings, 7.5-point dogs in Boston, 239 total. Sacramento's lineup is just what it is, like it is every other day. For a team with such a high total today, it's basically impossible to get to Sacramento because all of their prices are correct. I think Sabonis looks like the best option you can get to. He's 3% owned. I don't mind getting there in a GPP, but at the same time, like if you want to roster anybody from Sacramento, they are aggressively contrarian.
Yeah, somebody, I can't remember who, but somebody in chat, sort of was just like, oh, this is a game you have to get to tonight because it's such an appealing total and all that. But it's just like the pricing is completely correct. If you somehow find a way to get to, Domantas Sabonis or De'Aaron Fox into your lineups, that's great. But, I don't think that they're like actively better than a bunch of other guys that are going to be priced around there. Both guys average about 1.35 DraftKings points per minute. Fox should play around 35 minutes. Sabonis, if he manages to avoid foul trouble, should be in that same boat. We have seen more fantasy-friendly rotations from them recently when it comes to the wings, with Terrence Davis not playing as big a role, but Herter's already 6,100. Barnes is 5,700. Keegan is 4,600. I don't think there's a lot of value on any of those salaries either.
It's just weird. You don't normally see this sort of scenario happen for a game with basically the highest total on the slate. Yet here we are, just because they don't ever have anybody out. There's no value to squeeze out of it. Should we just go straight to Boston, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sacramento is just pretty straightforward. If you find a way to land on one of the starters, they're not bad plays. They're fine, but they're just priced like they should be.
Yeah. On the Boston side, it's basically the same scenario, only they look better because they don't have to face themselves. They get to face the Sacramento Kings. Everybody that's normally available is available. Jaylen Brown, only guy in double digits in ownership on the DraftKings side at 11%, but I would happily get to Tatum or Smart or Horford or even Malcolm Brogdon today. On the FanDuel end, Tatum is 16% owned where he's only 10,200. That's a very easy price tag to get to on the FanDuel end. Al Horford, 15% owned on FanDuel, gets the power forward eligibility along with center, so he fits in really well. I like Boston just because of the matchup.
So do I. I just don't really like the pricing. I think the easiest guy to get to on DraftKings is probably Jaylen Brown, 8,500 with shooting guard, small forward eligibility, averaging around 37 minutes per game. It makes him look good, and he's getting 11% ownership. Jason Tatum looks really good. The problem is he's in the same price range as John Morant. He's in the same price range as Steph Curry. Both of those guys average around 0.2 of a fantasy point per minute more than Tatum. Morant, that's without being on the floor. Curry is just overall. So, that's a lot to make up for just from a matchup. And it's not like those guys have bad matchups either. So that kind of makes it tough. You also have Anthony Davis there. If LeBron were to sit, I'm expecting him to play, but that's another guy in that price range that would look really good. And then you do have a lot of really high upside guys in the 9 to 10K range too, where they are just cheaper. SGA also, like $600 less expensive than Tatum and averaging the same fantasy production. So it just becomes difficult to really want to build around him, but I do think he's a good play if you land on him. Similarly to how I think, the Sacramento guys are good if you get there, but they're just not priorities. And that's just what I think about the rest of Boston as well.
If you're asking the question, am I reaching at Horford's usage increase trying to draw fouls on Sabonis while also ending your message with follow me for more coaching tips? I'm going to let everybody know that they shouldn't follow.
I'm confused. Did he ask a question about something completely irrelevant and then suggest people follow him for coaching?
That's what it seems like.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know to not follow. That would be smart. Yeah, I just think these guys look like interesting GPP plays because of Sacramento. They're as unappealing as Sacramento from a price standpoint, but they get to face Sacramento, so everybody looks like a little bit better. I'm fascinated by this game. I'm just never going to get there. Other than I think Jaylen Brown, who's, as you mentioned, the easiest guy to just fit into a lineup.
Yeah, gonna be more than happy for whatever pieces I do get to. But as far as just saying like, oh yeah, this is the guy that I'm just jamming into a bunch of lineups, I don't think it's there.
Okay. Well, we're through 3 games. It wasn't too bad so far. Schedule for the rest of the night is simple. It is NBA Live Before Lock coming up after this, and then everybody just gets to enjoy their Thanksgiving weekend. Make sure you're hitting the like button since you're here, subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell. We got 142 likes, 1,400 people. That's a pretty good crew for a Friday after Thanksgiving. I'm going to be honest with you. I would not be watching this show if I were not on it. It's a Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. But we appreciate having everybody here. I know No House Advantage appreciates it. They are the presenting sponsor of this show. Game 4. Now we got some stuff to talk about. The Atlanta Hawks are 8-point favorites in Houston, 232 total for Atlanta. We've got a Q tag on Clint Capella right now for a toothache, basically, which makes this game very, very interesting. Obviously, grabbing anybody that you can face against Houston is generally good. I think DeJounte Murray looks really good today at basically no ownership. A little surprised to see Trey pulling twice as much ownership for right now, given how much easier it is to get to Murray. On the FanDuel side, you get Young and Hunter both in double digits. John Collins' price just continues to fall. He's 5,700 on DraftKings Power Forward Center. But let's start with the big piece of news. If Clint Capella is out, is it just Jam City to Okongwu?
Yes. Like he should start. He should play a lot if Capella's out.
Have to assume that's some sort of bump to John Collins then as well. At least maybe he plays at center.
I mean, that's what I thought last time. That when Okongwu was out, I thought they would go with some Collins at center. They still didn't.
Yeah. What do you like here for the rest of Atlanta then? Because matching up against Houston is obviously exceptional.
Yeah, I like whoever's starting at center. If it's Okongwu, then obviously he's going to look like a really good value option. But if it's Capella, I think that's a pretty interesting play in tournaments as well. I don't think he'll get a ton of ownership. Right now we have him at none at 6,700, but he's a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy that should give you 28 to 30 minutes in a very appealing spot. So I think that whoever's starting at center is pretty appealing. I think John Collins is a good play one way or the other. I do agree with you if Capella's out that it should be beneficial for Collins. You should get more center minutes. Again, last time they just gave Frank Kaminsky the backup minutes, which I didn't think they would. I don't think they should, but they did. But, it does at least increase the likelihood that he gets those minutes, which are really productive. But the nice thing about Collins right now is that he's like a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy playing 32 to 34 minutes. He projects pretty well for his salary, even if he doesn't play center. And if he does get some center minutes, it's even better. And then in the backcourt, Trae Young pulling 12% ownership on DraftKings at $10,000. DeJounte Murray pulling 4%. I think they both look pretty good. Young wasn't getting any ownership this morning. I'm much more in line with the 10-ish% ownership he's getting now. DeJounte Murray has struggled recently, but I do still like the tournament upside he gives you at 9,100. Overall, he's a 1.15 to 1.2 DraftKings point per minute guy this year, but this is somebody that we know can really get it done with defensive stats. He can just get it done in a variety of ways. So he's not going to average the same production as Trae Young on a per minute basis. And at the beginning of the year, he kind of was, which was weird, and it's fallen off because you shouldn't have expected it to continue. But he does still give you a really, really high ceiling. He is still also going to play 36 or 37 minutes, assuming this game's competitive.
Yeah, I find him fascinating on DraftKings. I have him like pretty significantly under-owned just for that range. 9,100, you get point guard, shooting guard, so he's $900 cheaper than Trey, extra eligibility and no ownership. I feel like that sort of pivot looks fantastic in larger field GPP. So get me some DeJounte Murray on the DK end. Happy to get to Murray, Young, or Collins. I think they are the three best guys. And then if we're lucky enough to get Clint Capella out, Okongwu just becomes that dude at 3,700. That just becomes a very, very, very easy play to get to. Anything else for Atlanta?
No.
All right, for Houston, a little bit different here. Jalen Green is probable. Eric Gordon is out. Jayshawn Tate's still out. Alperen Şengün, doubtful. And then Bruno Fernando is questionable. Lots of trickle-down effects here for this team. Lots of ownership coming in here, too. Jalen Green's around 10%. Kevin Porter's around 10%. Kenyon Martin right now is at 16. Tari Eason is at 21. Usman Garuba's at 11. I don't really know what to do with Bruno Fernando right now. So what stands out most to you for Houston? What do you want to see? How much Fernando do you want if he is in? Because they have a lot of options.
So the Fernando piece is huge, and it, seems like it wouldn't be, but it is. He fully practiced Tuesday, so I'm assuming he's going to be good to go. And if he is, then you kind of have to see what they say about a minutes limit. And if he's starting, will, I think, give you at least somewhat of an answer, because if he's starting, he's probably not on a very restrictive minutes limit. But Usman Garuba has the potential to be very interesting. He's 3,700. If he starts, I would think that he's likely to play low to mid 20s in minutes. He's about a fantasy point per minute guy. He's 3,700. If Fernando is in, I think Garuba's playing like low to mid 20s. If Fernando's out, you can get even more than that from Garuba. Tari Eason, again, like if Fernando is in, if Garuba starts and Fernando is in, I think it's likely that you get something like 22-ish minutes from Garuba, 16 or something from Fernando, the rest of the center minutes going to Tari Eason, and then Eason also playing some minutes alongside, which would make him look solid at 4K. He's pulling 21% ownership. If Fernando's out, then the minutes should look even better for Tari Eason. And Eric Gordon being out weirdly also affects that center rotation, because if Eric Gordon were in, KJ Martin has kind of been used as the guy this year where the Rockets just plug him into the lineup kind of regardless of who is out at times. If Eric Gordon were in, it would be easy, if they wanted to, for them to play some lineups where Jabari Smith's at the 5, KJ Martin is at the 4 and whatever. But with Gordon being out, KJ Martin's going to end up soaking up a lot of those Eric Gordon minutes, which is going to open up more of those minutes for whatever combination of Garuba, Fernando, Tari Eason at the 5. So I like all of those guys. I like Garuba and Eason even more if Fernando sits. If Fernando starts, I think he's likely to play mid 20s. If he starts, I think that would be a sign that he's at least able to play decent minutes, even if it's not the like 30 or whatever that he was playing as a starter earlier. So I think that news is really big and it makes it kind of difficult to talk about right now, but one way or the other, $3,700 Garuba should look at the very least decent. Same goes for a 4K Eason. $4,300 KJ Martin pulling 16%. I'm expecting he starts in place of Eric Gordon and is going to look like a good value as well.
We just got the update that Wendell Carter Jr. and Chuma Okeke are both out. I don't know how much that's really going to matter for the Magic right now, but did want to let you guys know. Did you touch on Jalen Green and KPJ there at all?
No, I hadn't gone there yet. I was just sticking with the front court.
Okay, so obviously they are set to play, 35, 36 minutes. I like their pricing. I think they're getting, honestly, a little bit slept on just for the pace of this matchup and the role they're going to have with no Şengün on the floor. What are you doing with the guards?
First, I want to just apologize to Jared Neal for not being able to predict the future. I didn't know that Zach LaVine would, shoot 5%, but sorry about that. As far as the guards go, Şengün being out is a big deal. With Şengün on the floor this year, you have about a 25.5% usage rate, 24 to 25% usage rate for both Green and Porter. Without him on the floor, 28% usage rate for Green, 30% for Porter. And also you had a 20% usage rate for Eric Gordon, who obviously isn't playing, but that's even more usage that, can potentially go around. You hadn't seen really a bump for Jabari Smith, probably in large part because he has been completely incapable of making shots. But taking out Gordon and what was a 20% usage rate and replacing that with KJ Martin, there could be even more usage available for Porter and for Green. So I like both of those guys. I think they're very reasonably priced, and they're not getting much ownership here.
Yeah, I'm honestly like a little surprised to see how little they're pulling, because I just think that the spot works so much, and they see usage bumps with no Şengün on the floor. I think it's a fantastic opportunity to grab parts of Houston. I just like this game in general. Like I thought that DeJounte was underrepresented. I think these guards are underrepresented. I'd be happy to have just a lot of Atlanta and Houston.
Yeah, this game, I said it this morning, and I still think the same thing, and it could end up being even more appealing with Capella, with the Capella news. But this game has like a little bit lower total than the Sacramento Boston game, but from a pricing standpoint, this game is so much easier to get to.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like half of these guys are free in comparison to Sacramento
Right.
and Boston. Anything else for Houston?
I don't think so. Talked about bump for Green, bump for Porter. KJ Martin looks better. No, I think that's it. Okay, if Bruno Fernando's out, do you think Josh Christopher plays enough minutes at 3K to matter?
Probably not.
Yeah,
Not
I would lean
today.
no.
Not on 13.
Yeah, I would lean no also. It's just such an appealing game that if he somehow got into the 20s, but probably won't.
Yeah. Smaller slate, maybe. I don't even know if he would be that appealing if he just played an 8 o'clock slate, but
Right.
he'd be better.
Yeah, I mean, the 8 o'clock slate's still 8 games?
Yeah. Brooklyn Nets, 3.5-point favorites in Indiana. We got a 233 total on this one. For Brooklyn, no Watanabe, no TJ Warren. Seth Curry is available for this one. Only guy in double digits in ownership, obviously, is Nick Claxton at 5,200. No one on the FanDuel side, but we do get Durant to 8. Again, this should be an appealing matchup for Brooklyn against Indiana, but it's not. These guys are all priced where they should be at this point. These guys are generally in. The only guy that I had to have any real interest in that I'm surprised is pulling no ownership is Kyrie Irving.
I think I'm a little bit higher on Ben Simmons.
Okay, talk to me.
So his ownership has really come down from this morning, which is nice. But I think that Simmons was really underpriced when he was 6,300 and 6,100 and really popular. So now him being up to 7,200 doesn't really scare me off that much. He's still someone that's playing big minutes. He's playing really well. Played 32 and a half minutes again yesterday or 2 days ago. Lost 4 minutes to garbage time. I mean, I think he's pretty firmly locked into playing like 33 plus minutes now, as long as he doesn't have any crazy foul games. So I still think there's some upside for him there. I do like that $5,200 price tag on Claxton. He played 30 minutes last game. I don't know how long they're going to keep playing him and Simmons alongside each other a lot, but they have been, and there's no reason to think today's the day that it changes. It is a relatively appealing matchup, like you said. The Kyrie Irving piece is really interesting to me just because I don't know how many minutes he's going to play, but he's not coming back from injury. So I don't think you necessarily have to see this like progressive ramp up where he plays 28 and then he plays 32 and then he plays 34. Like there's just going to be a game where Kyrie goes and plays 38 minutes like he was prior to his suspension. 8,600 on FanDuel, I think is a really good time to test that out and hope it gets there. 9,200 on DraftKings, I think it's fine. It's riskier just because, you're talking about a price point where it's not that different than, or it's more expensive than DeJounte Murray. It's only $200 less than Tyrese Halliburton. So like there's a lot of guys in that range that you don't have those same sort of question marks. But with Kyrie coming in at 1% ownership, if you told me Kyrie's playing 37, 38 minutes, he's probably at least 5-6% owned.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably my favorite GPP play on FanDuel today. If he's 2.9% owned at 8,600, point guard, shooting guard. If he plays 36 minutes against Indiana, he could have 60 today.
So the other thing to keep in mind with Kyrie is, the playing time, the volatility around the potential playing time is what makes him really interesting in tournaments. He is only averaging about 1.15 DraftKings points per minute when he has played with Kevin Durant this year. Yeah. So it's a situation where like you need to get those minutes and you also need him to actually have an above average game. Otherwise, you're just getting comparable playing time to other dudes that produce more fantasy points per minute. So it's definitely a low probability spot. But anytime you see Kyrie at a falling price tag and no ownership, just based on talent, it becomes interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, these are GPP type plays. There's nobody on Brooklyn today that you're going to be getting aggressive amounts of. There's no cash plays on Brooklyn or anything like that. But the flyer for me is Kyrie Irving.
Bamba confirmed starting. Heat confirmed doing dumb shit. So Suggs, Franz Wagner, Banchero, Bowl, and Bamba starting for the Magic. Mo Wagner available to play. Caleb Martin downgraded to questionable for the Heat. Max Strus ruled out.
We'll get to the Heat in a bit. Those jerk-offs just in and out and in and out. I can't.
I felt pretty good that Strus was going to be playing after his upgrade earlier, but...
Yeah, you and me both. And I felt pretty good that Caleb Martin wasn't going to be playing, and now he's questionable.
Oh,
So
was he out?
uh,
I didn't even think he was on the injury report earlier.
he was listed as doubtful with an illness on Basketball Monster. So let me just double check it and look at the 4:30 injury report.
I'll say if he was doubtful, out, I probably just ignored him earlier and missed it.
Uh, yeah, Caleb Martin was
Yeah,
listed
he
as
was doubtful.
doubtful.
Now he's questionable. Okay.
Yeah, so that just even worse. The Indiana Pacers side of this one, the only guy in double digits in ownership on either FanDuel or DraftKings is Tyrese Halliburton at 13% on FanDuel, which I don't totally agree with. I think that's too much. There's just too many other guys around there that aren't getting that sort of ownership. I don't mind getting to some of these ancillary pieces, maybe not ancillary, but Miles Turner, Mather, and Jalen Smith, these guys pulling no ownership. I kind of like Indy just because Brooklyn's defense isn't very good and a couple of these guys are fine, but they're all priced essentially appropriately because nobody misses time.
I do really like the lack of ownership coming in here, and I do think the Isaiah Jackson news is pretty important. We've seen Isaiah Jackson be the straight backup to Miles Turner, and so typically on average you're going to get something like 29 minutes for Turner and 19 for Jackson. If Jackson's out, it's very likely you get more playing time for Turner. Last game he played several minutes more than normal, so it would make him look better if Jackson's out. He's a fine tournament play anyway if Jackson's in, but also if Jackson's out, we've seen, and I don't know if this continues or not, it's only a couple of games, but we've seen Indiana recently kind of go towards playing some smaller lineups. 2 games ago against, I believe it was Orlando, was when you got Jalen Smith just playing one stint to open the game, one stint to open the second half. That was a game where you got a lot of TJ McConnell playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton. Last game, though, against a big Minnesota team, you still only got like 22 minutes from Jalen Smith. He didn't play at all in the fourth quarter, and you got a lot of playing time from Benedict Mathurin. I think especially, one way or the other, but like especially if Jackson is out and like there's just kind of more minutes available in general, I think Mathurin maybe could just play a lot of minutes here against a small Brooklyn team. And again, I don't think Jackson matters very much there because I think it's likely that the rotation is either Miles Turner plays like 29 and Jackson plays 19, or it is Turner plays 33 and Goga plays 15. And it probably doesn't matter, but like it does at least throw some extra ways that rotation could go. But one way or the other, I think this is an intriguing spot for Mathurin.
I have no problem getting to Mathurin. I think he's the most under-owned guy on both DraftKings and FanDuel for the Pacers. I also have some interest in Miles Turner, 7,400 and 7,700. Gets the power forward eligibility on FanDuel, not really pulling all that much ownership, just feels like a good spot given what's on the opposite side of him for Brooklyn. So I kind of just want to get a bunch of Indiana. The only guy that I don't really want to get, and it's a guy that I don't mind getting, like Halliburton's good, but if he's the one guy getting ownership, I'm just going to take my chances on the rest of the Pacers.
Yeah, and that's not to say that I don't want to play Halliburton because I do, but there's a lot of upside from, we talked about Turner and Mathurin. There's upside from Buddy Hield, who's a fantasy point per minute guy. Jalen Smith, again, he hasn't been getting the minutes in the last couple of games, but he's 5K. He averages around 24 minutes per game over the last 10. He's a fantasy point per minute guy. You don't need much to go your way for him to be a good play either. Just the lack of ownership here in this game environment is really, really appealing to me.
Anything else for the Pacers?
Nope.
The New Orleans Pelicans are 2-point dogs in Memphis, 227 total. CJ McCollum out, COVID. Trey Murphy, questionable. Kind of important to find that one out. Got a little bit of ownership coming into Jose Alvarado here, 3,800 on DraftKings, 4,700 on FanDuel. He is 49 and 39% owned across both of those sites. It's a no-brainer cash option today, assuming he is starting once again. Do you have any specific thoughts on Alvarado? And then what do you want to do with the rest of the Pelicans?
I think Alvarado, if he's starting, just looks like a good value. He's around a 0.85 fantasy point per minute guy. Gave you like 30 minutes last game. What I do think is really, really interesting, and I have no idea why it's the case, Alvarado is projected for 49% ownership on DraftKings at 3,800, while Devontae Graham is projected for 0.1% at 3,500. I don't know if that is going to be a real thing, but Devontae Graham played like 3 fewer minutes than Jose Alvarado last game. He's a better point per minute guy. He can very easily, depending on the game flow and how guys are playing, just take minutes from Alvarado. That gap should not be that big.
I don't get it either. I was hoping you were going to bring it up. It's really, really weird to me. Like, I obviously have Alvarado projected for more minutes, but if they're behind and they need some scoring, I don't think that Alvarado is going to be the answer. Flat 3,500 on the FanDuel side for Graham, unowned. Even if you just want to say Devontae Graham is 4% owned today, 49-4 is still
Right.
ultra aggressive.
For this to not be worth mentioning, you have to assume that, like, instead of being 0.1%, Graham is like 15, and instead of being 49, Alvarado is like 25. I mean,
Yeah.
This gap should not be big at all.
No, it shouldn't.
They also played alongside each other last game, so it's not like you're talking about, only one of them can get there.
They played 58 minutes total together.
Right, and it could have certainly been more. They both subbed out. They both looked like they were going to close the game. They did both close the first half. I don't think you need to set a rule where it's like one of Alvarado or Graham. I think you just play them both and play a lot of Devontae Graham if he's actually not going to be owned.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It looks super, super sneaky given that ownership. Alvarado straight into every cash lineup, correct?
Yeah, I would think so. And also, so as far as the closing lineup thing goes, you will need like Herb Jones not to be in the closing lineup for both of them to be in there. In the previous game, Jones had some first half foul trouble, so you had Graham in there. I assume Jones probably could have subbed in, especially if they're winning, to be in the closing lineup. So I'm not saying I think that both of these guys are in the closing lineup, but like they played enough minutes alongside each other last game, and they're both so cheap that it's pretty easy for them both to just have good games.
Anything else here for the Pels? Are you liking Ingram or Zion? Are you trying to get to more of the Pelicans?
Also, if Trey Murphy plays, then the Graham Alvarado thing becomes riskier.
Yeah, for sure. If Trey Murphy is out, there's just a shit ton of minutes to go around. Yeah, like to me, Ingram, Zion, interesting enough, but they fall into the same bucket as pretty much every other star player that we've talked about so far that has 4% ownership. I don't think we have anything to talk about for the first part of this one. The Washington Wizards are 3-point dogs in Miami. It's a 213 total. Q tag on Morris, on Beal, on Rui. I mean, if these guys are all in, I think Washington is basically unplayable. If they're out, what do you like here? We're just sort of trapped by this news for the Wizards once again.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to even talk about because it's like each guy individually affects other things. But Bradley Beal, if he's out, you're talking about increased opportunities for increased production for Kristaps Porzingis, for Kyle Kuzma. Also, most likely more playing time for Corey Kispert. You could see Will Barton or Jordan Goodwin get additional minutes if Beal's out as well. Actually, most likely you will see one of them get additional minutes if Beal is out. If Morris is out, we saw Goodwin start in his place last game. He played 25 minutes, didn't play in the fourth quarter. You had Will Barton play more minutes and close. That certainly can happen again, but it doesn't have to because we have seen plenty of times this year where Beal was out, where Barton just did not play a lot of extra minutes because he hasn't really been good this year. There was a exchange on Twitter that I found entertaining the other day where like somebody was complaining that Goodwin didn't get the closing minutes and somebody replied and was like, oh, well, obviously you should have played Barton. Like he's always going to be that guy. And it's like, he hasn't been that guy this entire year. So there's no guarantee that he is again, but Barton's 3,300. Like he's going to look like a good option if Beal and or Morris are out. 4K for Jordan Goodwin's going to look pretty good as well. If everybody's in though, I have basically no interest in this team.
Evidently, I skipped Memphis in the Pels game. I kind of just want to skip Memphis now because seeing more than one person tell me that I did it, there's nothing worse than chat repeating themselves over and over again. Like just look, oh no, now what?
Have you thought about hosting better?
No, I haven't. Do you want to take over?
I mean,
show me how it's done.
This show will be done by 5:40.
For the Grizzlies, there is no ownership coming into either side. To me, this is just sort of like 9 other different spots that we've seen. If you get to Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson, we are waiting on Steven Adams news. He is questionable, as is John Conchar. So there's some weirdness here, and we have no Santé Aldama. This could look ridiculous, but for right now, I don't think that it's really all that actionable.
Yeah, I think that this team could end up being really shorthanded and really appealing, but without knowing the news, there's also the potential that there's not a lot here. John Morant is a good pay up option. Like he's averaging 1.6 DraftKings points per minute without Desmond Bane on the floor. He has Luka Doncic type rates. He also can play a couple more minutes without Bane out there. Jackson looks fine at 6,800. Adams looks okay at 5,300. But where I think you really start to get value is if Adams sits and you get a $4,200 Brandon Clark starting, that's going to look good. You're going to get a 3K flat Xavier Tillman as the backup center, most likely. In that case, if John Conchar is out, you're probably getting more run for Tyus Jones alongside Morant, which isn't super useful because he's already 5,800. But it would also open the door for Jake LaRavia / David Roddy to just get hot at close to the minimum salary. Probably not a whole lot you can do with the Conchar piece. I think the Adams piece is huge. And to the person that said they think Devontae Graham overperformed because of blowouts, he didn't even play garbage time.
Well, I mean, why would anybody want to get that right with actual factual information? All right, so now that we got Memphis for the nothing that we could actually talk about, we'll head back over to Miami, another team that is just a total team that we can't really talk about. Tyler Hero is questionable. Caleb Martin now questionable. Gabe Vincent questionable. Dwayne Dedmon questionable. No Butler. No Strus. No Oladipo. No Robinson. No Yurtseven. They have 6 guys that are definitely not out. 4 Q tags. Is there anything right out of the gate that we can actually talk about for Miami?
Bam Adebayo, I think if everybody's in, I think Bam looks the best at 8,300. You get increased production without Jimmy Butler. Granted, if Hero is also playing, he cuts into that a bit. But I think Bam ends up looking the best if everybody that's questionable plays.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Tyler Hero is already 8K on DraftKings. That's tough. 7,200 on FanDuel is a bit better. I like $5,400 Caleb Martin on FanDuel, I guess, at 5% ownership. If you need to get to something, he's going to be out there for 36 minutes. So there's no way to talk about this until all the Q tags come in.
Nance isn't on the same team as Adams.
Yeah, I have no idea where he's going with that one. But no, I don't think that the backup center for the Pelicans is affected by the starting center of the Grizzlies. Anything else for Miami? Watch Live Before Lock for Miami. Like, it's just, I would love to give intricacies here, but they've got like 120 minutes questionable right now.
Yeah, Caleb Martin was upgraded on the last injury report. He's questionable now.
Yeah. Just going to be Caleb Martin's doubtful. Yeah. Everybody just reading the same message. No, questionable. You know what's not questionable? How good it looks to play at no house advantage, where you guys could squeeze out a little bit of overlay. Based on what I'm reading today, you guys could use the overlay. There is a link in the description to this show. Click that link, head on over to No House Advantage, sign up. You will be able to get up to $50 of a match deposit bonus. If you put in 50, they'll give you another 50. They're running tonight. So we're picking player props here, by the way. You're taking over-unders, and you're ranking them on a confidence interval. Today's contest, the NBA 15K slam dunk, 5K to first, has 1,200 entries right now. Only 215 are in there. So we're looking at 1,000 right now. There's a decent chance there's at least reduced rake, if not straight up overlay. It is here for you guys. And the best part of all of No House Advantage is that we have optimal projections already generated at Stokastic. They cost you nothing, completely free. And we have optimal lineups already generated. So you don't even have to think any further than that. We take our projections, we apply them to the props that exist here, and then we put them in the confidence interval for you. So we have the best ones in 10, and then 9, 8, 7. We work our way down. And there are lineups upon lineups upon lineups there for you to take advantage. It's the best spot you're going to find to build a bankroll right now. Click the link in the description, head on over and make that deposit.
So he clarified what he meant with the Steven Adams thing. The last time Memphis played New Orleans, Adams was in foul trouble, I think it was. And that's the game where Joval played like 14 minutes and Nance played like 30, whatever. But I think that's just a conclusion that people came to that was mostly coincidence. It's not like they were matching Joval's minutes with Steven Adams. If you look at the way they played the third quarter, Steven Adams played 9 minutes and 21 seconds to open the second half. Joval played 4 minutes and 30 seconds, picked up a couple fouls. Larry Nance came in, played really well. Then they went to a stretch where neither Nance or Joval were in. I don't think it had anything to do with, like, I think it was people just kind of retroactively looked back and said, oh, Steven Adams didn't play, so Joval didn't play. But like, if you look at the way they were matching things up, I think it was just two distinct things.
The Cleveland Cavaliers are 4.5-point dogs in Milwaukee, 215 total. Cleveland is going to be without Karis LeVert, Kevin Love, and Ricky Rubio, with a doubtful tag on Lamar Stevens, who has become a much more important part of this team. There is no ownership coming in on DraftKings of any sort of substance. 16% is coming into Jared Allen on FanDuel, where he has power forward center eligibility. I don't really see what we would be prioritizing here for Cleveland, other than maybe you want to get weird with Chetty or Dean Wade.
Yeah, I had mentioned Chetty earlier just as somebody that, another value option that is just getting nowhere near the ownership of Jose Alvarado that could certainly play 30-ish minutes here. He's pulling 6% ownership on DraftKings at the same price. I think you get to Alvarado first, but Chetty looks pretty good. Lamar Stevens doubtful as well, so should get a lot of minutes for Chetty. Makes him look like a pretty good value option. Beyond that, if you just manage to get to some Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, both guys are good, but I don't think anything really stands out from Cleveland. Very difficult matchup as well.
Trey Murphy in, by the way, so that answers that New Orleans question quickly.
Yeah, Trey Murphy in. Xavier Tillman now questionable for Memphis. So the Murphy being in, I don't feel as strongly now about Devontae Graham being like a great play. I still think he's an interesting tournament play, but certainly a lot riskier now with Murphy in.
On the Milwaukee side of this one, not too much to talk about here. We do have a Q tag on Pat Connaughton. Drew Holiday is in. Serge Ibaka questionable as well. Don't know how much that matters. The highest owned guy on Milwaukee is 2.8% owned Drew Holiday. Highest on FanDuel is 5.8 on Giannis. As always, like, if you have the ability to get to Giannis, don't be mad about that. I actually think Drew is going underrepresented in this one. We saw him play 36 minutes on Wednesday, so those minutes can be there. The only guy that I would really want to get to here is probably Drew Holiday, with the caveat that anything that you get of Giannis is just Giannis.
Yeah, if you get to Giannis, cool, looks good, but not going to be any sort of a priority for me at that price tag. I agree. I think Drew's probably the most appealing guy to get to. 1.27 DraftKings points per minute this year. Influenced a little bit from playing without Giannis a couple of games, but he's the most interesting guy to me, I think, at 7,800.
Price works. I didn't think that he was going to be playing that sort of minutes that quickly. And then, 35.8 on Wednesday means Drew Holiday can just be out there. But yeah, I don't really know how to talk about anything else against Milwaukee. This is not a great total for the game. It's a defensive matchup, and these guys are priced up, if anything. So we can keep it moving and go to the Chicago Bulls, 3-point favorites in Oklahoma City. Q tag on Goran Dragic. Otherwise, everybody is available. And we're getting some ownership here because they're facing Oklahoma City. DeMar DeRozan is about 20% owned on both sites. Zach LaVine is 15 on DK and 25 on FanDuel, where he's still just 6,900. Even Vooch is getting 10% ownership on the DraftKings side. I have some interest in like Dosunmu or Patrick Williams, Caruso. I think Kobe White could even be like a flyer in a GPP. I think Chicago's a little sneaky today.
Yeah, I think Chicago looks good. We've gotten falling pricing on them, which is nice. 7,100 for Levine, 16% ownership, looks pretty good. DeRozan sitting at 19% ownership at 8,100, probably going a little bit over-owned, but also, still a good play. The front court's really interesting to me. We have seen Andre Drummond's ownership drop a lot since this morning, which I think makes sense. This morning we had him at like 17%. I was like, there's no way Andre Drummond's pulling that on this slate. But we have him at 9% now, 4K. I mean, he's going to just grab every missed shot while he's on the floor against this team, or at least he should. So I think that, it's a really, really high upside spot for him. Obviously, you're probably going to need him to find some way into a couple of extra minutes. And then it's a good spot for Vooch as well. So I like all four of those guys quite a bit. If you want to take shots, like you said, on a $3,200 Kobe White or a $3,800 Alex Caruso with Goran Dragic questionable, I think that's fine as well. White did close the last game, played 25 minutes. Ayo Dosunmu did not close that game. Typically, you're going to have him out there, but obviously it can be White at times. So either of those guys for cheap look reasonable as well.
Okay. Yeah, I have these guys just popping up as needing to get owned a little bit more than the nothing that they're providing. Not the DeRozan, Levine, Vooch combo, but like everything else at the bottom. You willing to take a shot on Kobe White?
I wouldn't I mean, I think I don't know if I will get there. I'm willing to, in the sense that like I'm not gonna check my lineups for Kobe White and then
Sure.
remove him.
Okay. I just didn't know how well you had him, like if you had him projected enough that you think you're going to get shares.
Yeah, I mean, in 150 probably. I wouldn't in like 3.
Okay. Anything else for the Bulls?
No.
For the Oklahoma City Thunder, Mike Muscala is out. Lindy Waters and Jalen Williams with an I are both with the G League. So I think everybody that's normally available for OKC is available here. Josh Giddey is 10% owned on DK, as is Shea. Shea is 16% owned on FanDuel. For the first time in a while, I kind of like a couple more pieces for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they're starting to stabilize a bit.
Yeah, you can say that. Until they're not. But I do think Pogoshevsky is at least somewhat interesting. Overall, as a starter this year, he's only averaged 24 minutes per game. Recently, he has seemingly not been jerked around quite as much. Had foul trouble last game. I think that probably explains why he didn't start the second half. He had 4 in the first half. 5K flat, I don't mind, especially 3% ownership. I don't mind gambling on that one. Outside of that, I still don't really have interest on the non-SGA, Giddey, Dort guys.
That's fair. And like they are very clearly better than the other options, but whether it's Jalen Williams, Poku, or if you're going to get that random game where Jeremiah Robinson Earl falls into 34 minutes, I bet that feels pretty good at 4,200. Obviously, any SGA that you get to, please enjoy that because that dude is fantastic at basketball. All righty, let's see here now. Next one up, we have the Los Angeles Lakers. Oh, God, I hate this team. 3-point favorites in San Antonio, 232 total. This might actually be the easiest team on today's slate to talk about. LeBron is questionable, but rumor has it he's actually going to be playing today. I have him projected in. Patrick Beverley is suspended for the next 3 games for being a total pussy. This team is the worst team that you could roster. If LeBron James plays today, like I don't really want any of it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Like if LeBron sits, it starts to become interesting. But if you assume he's in, like, are you assuming that he just replaces Beverly in the starting lineup? Or do you think they go to like Nunn or Schroeder?
I think we see like Brown, Walker, Reeves, Braun, AD.
Brown, Walker, Reeves, Braun. So yeah, that would be LeBron replacing Beverly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my first guess too. If you get news that Kendrick Nunn is starting or Dennis Schroeder is starting, then they would look better than they do right now. But my guess is that you just get LeBron replacing Beverly, in which case it all just looks like shit.
Mitchell Robinson will play tonight. Cam Reddish and Derrick Rose are both out. Fire up your Quentin Grimes today?
Yeah, I think Grimes looks like a pretty good value.
This Lakers team just looks so bad today. If LeBron is out, or is it just sort of like I can play some AD and that's it?
Yeah, AD's at like 1.7 DraftKings points per minute without Bron on the floor this year. He's going to look like a really good play if LeBron sits. It's just that he's priced up a bit, and it's going to be tough to get there if LeBron's in.
Lawrence Rose says, you guys don't like anyone tonight. It's not an easy slate for pricing.
No.
You should appreciate the fact that we're truthful here. We can just talk about shit plays like other shows. You're giving you the truth. It's hard. There's a lot of very, very similar looking plays where you can grab a chunk of salary tier. Like I'm just going to pick off the top of my head, like 8,200 to 8,800. And it's like, okay, yeah, probably everybody in that range is sort of the same.
Right. Yeah. That's how I feel about like the guards too. It's just like, oh, I really like Tyrese Halliburton, but I also like Murray, and I also really like Young. I also really like Ja. And unfortunately, I have limited roster spots.
All righty. Let's go to the San Antonio side, which is a little bit more interesting. For the Spurs, no Jay Rich, no Doug McDermott. Blake Wesley also obviously out for a while. Zach Collins is finally back. Malachi Branham is available, as is Jordan Hall. There's no ownership on DraftKings coming in. This is the 100th straight team that is in that case, but Trey Jones, 8.5% owned, is the highest owned guy here, which kind of makes me more interested in Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson and Jakob Poeltl. What do you want to do with the Spurs?
I don't think anything, it's another team. I don't think anything really stands out. I think they're pretty much correctly priced. I do think that the lack of ownership is somewhat interesting. I think I prefer the Indiana. I think I prefer Indiana a little bit more than the Spurs as far as these teams go, where like nobody's getting ownership, but there are a lot of guys you could play. But I think they're comparable where, Jakob Poeltl, 7,300, probably going to play about 30 minutes. He's like a 1.15 fantasy point per minute guy. Clearly upside there. Same can be said for $7,400 Vassell, who should play like 34, 35 minutes. Keldon Johnson, same price, same thing. So Trey Jones, about a fantasy point per minute at 6,200, should give you 30 to 32 minutes. So I think all of those guys look okay, but there's not any of them that I'm pointing to and saying like, oh yeah, it's a priority for me to get to these guys over other guys.
Yeah, that's really the problem here. There's just so many of these Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jakob Poeltl type characters on different games. If you want to have a stand to take on one of them, like I get it, but you could do it a bunch of different ways. On FanDuel, Vassell and Trey Jones are both at around 12% owned. I think Trey Jones is a little too high there. I'd be still fine with getting to Devin Vassell at that number. Now what?
So we skipped Memphis. We talked about the Pels, but we basically only talked about Devontae Graham and Jose Alvarado.
Yeah, no, I mean, I asked follow-ups, like, where are you at on Ingram or Zion? They were fine.
I didn't really answer you then.
Yeah.
I just thought about it because somebody asked about Joe Val in chat, and I remembered that Joe Val has actually averaged 1.5 fantasy points per minute without McCollum on the floor this year. Who knows how many minutes he plays, but yeah, I don't remember saying it. Maybe I did, but all of Ingram, Zion, Joe Val are better on a point per minute basis without McCollum.
If you're trying to play Joe Val, FanDuel's the site to do it today, where he's 5,600.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, folks. One last thing that we got to talk about. It's the goods, man. We got a decent Cyber Monday, Black Friday, whatever we want to call it, sale going on. And that is $5 for Stokastic plus Platinum Weekly. That is every single thing that we have behind our paywall except for Fantasy Cruncher. That's going to be projections, ownership, boom bust, our lineup generator. Everything that you could possibly want behind the paywall at stokastic.com is available for $5. You can see the QR code on the screen, or you can go straight to stokastic.com/promos. That's what you're looking for here. It's as good as a deal as you're going to get. It's basically the best deal that we've ever offered. $5 for a week. You'll waste $5 on something else, I'm sure of it. So waste it here with us. Sign up, stokastic.com/promos. 3 games to go. Detroit Pistons are 12.5-point dogs in Phoenix. 224 total. Not a great spot here for the Pistons. And basically an impossible team to talk about. No Cade Cunningham, no Beef Stew, no Sadiq Bey. Q tags on Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Hamidou Diallo, and Corey Joseph. Is there anything that you could possibly say about the Pistons right now that will apply based on the news?
Center should be unaffected. You should get 48 minutes from Jalen Duren and Marvin Bagley. If this game blows out, it's likely that Duren is on the winning end of that. It's also relatively likely he's on the winning end of that anyway, just because that's typically been the case recently. So I think this team at the center position is comparable to Philly, except for they're a little bit cheaper. So I like Jalen Duren at 4,200. I think Bagley at 4,500 is kind of interesting too. But $4,200 Duren, kind of no matter what happens news-wise, should be a pretty interesting tournament option. Beyond that, it's all subject to change. And this team really scares me because, normally when you start getting guys ruled out and you start getting shorthanded, it's like, all right, well, they're going to be worse, but also you're going to get really good per minute production. This team's going to potentially be really short on ball handlers against a really good Phoenix team. You could just get a game where the Pistons score like 70 points.
Yeah, this is going to be ugly. They don't have anybody good here if they start hemorrhaging bodies.
Right. If Ivy is out, if Hayes is out, you're talking about Alec Burks is going to need to step up as a scorer. Bojan Bogdanovic is going to see a higher usage rate, but Bojan's not creating for himself. He's not creating for anybody else, so he still needs somebody to get him the ball against a good Phoenix team that knows they're looking to get him the ball. It just has the potential to be garbage. But if these guys get ruled out, I do think, Alec Burks at least gets a lot of opportunities. Bojan sees increased usage, but again, his salary is already up. I think Jalen Duren's probably my favorite play almost regardless.
Yeah, he's got the potential to play a boatload of minutes today if this breaks the right way.
In terms of playing time. If they get crushed, no reason Duren's not playing. If he plays well, he can stay out there. I think there's a lot of ways for Duren to succeed.
Yeah, this news is going to be important. I don't know when we're going to get it, but this whole team is just sort of wild. Like, obviously, Boyan is basically the same no matter what, but picks up a little extra ball handling as we start hemorrhaging some of these dudes. He's probably the only, he and the centers are probably like the only guys that are just, we know exactly what we're getting out of them, at least from a playing time perspective. On the Phoenix side, they scare the hell out of me too, because they should just beat the pants off of the Pistons. Nobody's pulling double-digit ownership on the DraftKings side. Campaign is 20% owned on FanDuel at 6,700. Book gets to 14% owned at 9,700 on FanDuel. I'd just be scared to play Phoenix in this one, but Booker, Bridges, Payne, Ayton, you can't really go wrong there.
Yeah, I think that they all look okay, but they are getting more expensive. You have Ayton like $1,000 more than he was last week. Booker's up to almost 10K. One thing I did mention this morning, and again, like it's a 13-game slate. It's not a huge deal. Bismack Biyombo, once again, last game, just played all of the backup center minutes behind Jock Landale. He's a good point per minute guy. He's 3,100. He's probably playing 16, 17 minutes. I don't think he's the craziest, just, hope to run good in a tournament type play.
Yeah, he can very easily do the Paul Reed thing and be a backup center that can win you a slate at no salary. It's just how it works. We talk about Drummond a lot for it too. But like, I don't like looking into blowouts and everything, but a team like Phoenix against like a team like the Pistons missing, I don't know, potentially like 6 dudes.
If I'm ever going to care about if I'm ever going to really care about the risk that comes with a winning team in a blowout, it's in spots like this where I don't think Phoenix needs to have anybody play particularly well. Yeah. Especially like if Ivy is out, if Hayes is out, I don't think Phoenix needs to have like, normally when you talk about this spot, it's just like, oh, well, yeah, Phoenix might blow them out, but if they do, it probably means Devin Booker dropped 40 real points in 3 quarters. I think if they just sort of all have normal games for 3 quarters, there's a chance they're up by 30 because the Pistons have 55 points through 3.
Yeah, like I think Phoenix's defense is the problem here for the Pistons. I just don't know how they create against them. It's just too good. So be aware of it. It doesn't change anything that I do, but on paper, this is one of those spots where I'm just like, oh, this is kind of gross.
Yeah.
This one's not gross, though. Utah Jazz, 7.5-point dogs in Golden State, 240 total. No Mike Conley, no Rudy Gay, no Balmaro or Johnny Juzang. I don't know who that is. Micah Potter with the G League. We saw Colin Sexton step into the starting lineup on Wednesday and play a boatload of minutes, and his price does not reflect those minutes today. Markkanen's in double digits in ownership. Clarkson's at 17 on DraftKings. Sexton is 30 on both sites. Olynyk is 20 to 30, depending on the site. Even Jared Vanderbilt's getting some love on FanDuel. But to me, very obviously, Colin Sexton's the first guy up here for Utah. Yeah,
completely agree. One really appealing thing we saw from the last game with Utah in general is that the starters actually played starter minutes. You got 34.5 minutes from Markkanen. You got 35 from Sexton, 37.5 from Clarkson, 35 from Olynyk, 29 from Beasley, who isn't a starter, but he basically closes every game now. Vanderbilt only played 22. But it is sort of interesting if they are going to condense this rotation a little bit, and Mike Conley is out, it starts to make the whole team look better than normal, because that's sort of been the downside to them this year is Markkanen averages around 33 minutes per game, and nobody else averages more than 30 or 31. So those rotations in general were really appealing. The price tag, like you said, on Colin Sexton looks really good. He's averaged about 31 minutes per game in his 3 starts in place of Conley this year. He's averaging about 0.9 fantasy points per minute. Looks like a really good value. Plenty of upside for Olynyk. Plenty of upside for Jordan Clarkson. Markkanen looks fine as well. Jared Vanderbilt pulling 6% ownership. It's hard for him to find his way in the closing lineups between the combination of fouls and him being an offensive 0 and Malik Beasley just taking those minutes a lot. But he is a good point per minute guy when he's out there.
Is Colin Sexton a better play than Jose Alvarado?
Probably.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Pricing's pretty tight today. You are getting, an $800 discount.
Boss Pro says Sexton's going to be overowned, but he's cheap. I think he's underowned.
It depends. I think it completely depends on how you're saying underowned, overowned. I don't think he's in the optimal lineup more than 30% of the time.
That's fair.
I think
I also don't need the optimal lineup.
Right, exactly. Gamer. That's sort of, yeah. I think he's going overowned in the strict sense of optimal lineup versus ownership. I think he's probably going underowned in the sense of making really good lineups.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. let's see, to 4.6. Like I have him like 50-50 to 7x. So big fan if that happens. But I just like getting to Utah. What do we do on the opposite side here with Golden State? We've got Curry and Thompson and Green. I'll pull in about 15% ownership, depending on who we're looking at here. Those are the guys that I like the most. I like Clay more than anything. His ownership is also there. But just in general, getting to the Warriors starters and include Poole, I guess, in that list is great against Utah because Utah's defense is awful.
Yeah, and like you said, the three getting the most ownership, I think, are the three most appealing for me too. Steph's averaging nearly 1.6 DraftKings points per minute this year. He's still 10-6, so I think that looks like a good play. Thompson's cheap, averaging 0.95 DraftKings points per minute. Draymond's playing with the second unit now. I'm interested to see what that does from a fantasy standpoint because there has been a tendency in the past in games where Steph Curry misses for people to be like, oh, Draymond Green's going to step up and whatever. And it's like, well, he's worse because he doesn't have Steph to pass to. So I'm curious to see what happens now with him running with the second unit. Like, I know he's talked about sort of needing to get familiarity with Jordan Poole and them to sort of get on the same page. So I'm just curious to see sort of how that works out. I think it has the potential to be a fantasy bump for Draymond, just getting him out there with that second unit, having the ball in his hands more. I don't think it's a guarantee because it sort of just depends on how things play out there. Are people converting his assists, basically?
Got to hit you with this super chat quickly. Jeff Williams says, not sure if there's any viable way to answer this, but if the 8 o'clock news is not out before lock, should I put Shake at point guard or shooting guard in a high dollar GPP on DraftKings?
Do we have? I'm trying to think off the top of my head if we have more important shooting guard or point guard news, but I don't think.
I don't know.
Whatever position. What is Alvarado only a point guard?
Let me get there quickly. You might beat me to it. He is. Yes, point guard only. So shooting guard.
I would probably put my first thought is I would put Milton at the position Alvarado does not play because there's a very good chance in a high stakes lineup you're going to be playing Alvarado. So if you put Milton at point guard, you're going to end up with Alvarado at guard, and that's going to limit your flexibility.
Terrence Ross also out now for Orlando, and Drew Eubanks out today too for the Blazers.
So bump Nurkic, I think.
Yep.
For Terrence Ross, that shouldn't matter.
No, they got enough idiots that look like Terrence Ross. Closing it out, final game, Denver Nuggets. What's up?
Nothing.
3.5-point favorites in LA against the Clippers, 218 total for Denver. Q tag on MPJ, no Bones, no Jeff Green. Q tag on Ish Smith. I'm not so sure any of this information matters all that much other than Porter sort of trying to unlock a little bit more Bruce Brown, but that salary looks fine. Feel free to roster 11K Jokic on FanDuel if you want, but I don't find Denver all that appealing.
Yeah, neither do I. I expect Bruce Brown will start if Porter is out, but Porter, like he does a lot of everything when he's out there, but there's not one thing that he's like a really high rated guy in. So it's not like, he's out, you're attributing a ton more usage to Murray or Jokic or whatever. Brown's price tag has already come up. So yeah, I think that I don't really care too much about Denver.
The Clippers, on the other hand, are incredibly confusing and difficult to nail down. No Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard, no Luke Kennard. We just saw this lineup play on Wednesday. Morris, Mann, Coffey, Powell, all about 15% owned on DraftKings. Not a lot of love going to Reggie Jackson, who played relatively limited minutes in the last one, as did Ivica Zubac. In comparison to what they normally play, I expect those numbers to rebound. You can kind of play everybody from the Clippers today.
Don't sleep on 1% owned 6K John Wall. Yeah. He only played 20 and a half minutes last game, but that game was pretty much out of hand down the stretch. The closing lineup was Moses Brown, Robert Covington, Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, and Coffey. Wall did close the first half. Jackson was out there for some of those minutes alongside him as well. Wall's been extremely productive, like 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without George and Kawhi on the floor. He's risky because you don't know exactly where the minutes are going to be, but if he gets 26, 27 minutes here, he's just kind of interesting. Beyond that, Norman Powell's got about a 30% usage rate without those guys out there. Terrence Mann is still cheap. Amir Coffey is cheap, played 36 minutes. May or may not close in a competitive game. There's a lot of ways that could go, but yeah, I think all those guys are interesting. Zubac, again, didn't play down the stretch. Normally he's going to give you around 32 minutes. I think that at 2% owned and 6,400, I really like him too, actually.
Yeah, that's just, you can make a real good case for Jackson, Zubats, Morris, Mann, Coffee, Powell, John Wall. And if you want to get super duper weird, go to Nick Batum, but that's not really the one for me. But you never know when that dude's just going to fall into 28 minutes. Final thoughts? Anything else before we get out of here? We're a little long.
Be ready to late swap.
There we go, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here on this stream. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. Thanks, guys. Hit that like button on your way out the door. Actually, don't leave the door. Stay here, but still hit that like button.
It's in the store.
I'll have to go take a look.
And the stuff is so cheap. Like I was able to get like TVs that cost $1,000, like new laptop. Like they've got really good deals.
All right, Stokastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Friday afternoon. I think this is like my second or at least my third show, second with Greg. I'm going to go on vacation here for a little bit, so no one's going to see me for a couple weeks. But Greg, welcome to Friday night. Greg was just telling me how he's spending all my crowns. He's trying to encourage me. I have 1.78 million crowns burning a hole in my pocket here. I should utilize these. Simple Black Friday shopping there on DK.
I mean, they have, I don't want to seem like I'm out here just shilling for them or anything, but I mean, they've significantly improved the rakeback program and the Black Friday stuff. Like you get thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff using crowns for, not very much cost relative. So, I mean, I did all my holiday shopping on the DK Dynasty Reward Store today.
That's not a bad idea. My whole plan was just to get to 2 million and be a dork and screenshot it or whatever. I have no reason to save them other than technically on some of these rakeback. A lot of sites have rakeback points. You don't want to use them, or it's preferable to not use them if you are a winning player, because they do get taxed as soon as you use them. If you're not using them, they're not taxed. So it's better off if you use them during a downswing, and that sort of evens things out. But at that point, you're really being a super nit. The other thing to remember when you are purchasing things through those crown stores, Greg, you will be responsible for the taxes upon that merchandise. Probably at full value, not the value you're paying for it, would be my guess. But nonetheless, this is a good way to use it because they have a bunch of gift cards on there too. I didn't go look and see if those were half off.
You could get $500 Amazon gift cards for half off.
Oh, I should just straight convert and just give it to my wife. Happy birthday.
You can do that. You can do that as well too. So I'm trying to figure. You could actually get her based on the amount of crowns. You have like $6,000 in Amazon gift cards.
Yes, that would be absolutely wild. That would be absolutely wild. Good times. Wow, this is now food for thought here, because Amazon you can just use for anything. So okay. All right, I may have to talk to her about that or surprise her with it. We'll see. But because her birthday is in 2 weeks, so this is coming to fruition. I haven't gotten her anything yet. I mean, other than a trip to Hawaii, but hey, that doesn't count apparently, but that's okay. All righty. Let's get into this. 13 games on the slate. There's one underway right now, started at 5:00. NHL started earlier today. Somehow they're going with most of their games at 8:00. That's when their main slate's starting. NBA, 7:00, one game, 7:30, one game, 8 games at 8:00, a 9:00, a 10:00, and a 10:30. So we're going to be around here for a while. We're staying on for an extra 30 minutes with you guys, courtesy of No House Advantage. We'll be talking about them. And I would be remiss if I did not bring up the amazing deal that Stokastic is offering right now. You get about 72 more hours to take advantage of this. We are giving you 1 full week of all access, everything. That is everything. All sports, all projections, Fantasy Cruncher included separately. All sports, all projections for just $5. Promo code thanks. That's it. It's that simple. So get in on that. That expires on the 28th. And you can only get 1 week. I saw somebody asking in chat, can you stack up multiple weeks? No, but I like the way you're thinking. Take advantage of those $5.
That's somebody who I would assume is a sharper DFS player than a lot of people who's trying to figure out the way to optimize value.
Yes, absolutely. All righty. Because this is a wild one, we may get backloaded news, would be my guess, just with the 2 games tipping off within the first hour. Did you want to walk through this by position? Do you want to hit some of the news? Is there certain teams you want to hit on a slate this large? It's kind of context is everything, and we can kind of do whatever we want. Nobody is getting extreme ownership at this point. Probably I haven't looked in an hour or two, but nobody really should be going over 20%, or you really shouldn't be going much over 20% on anybody unless you're willing to carry a pretty heavy risk, because this is one of our larger player pools that we will see with 26 teams in there. How would you like me to steer this ship?
Yeah. So first of all, if anybody has questions, add us in Discord and we could answer those as the show goes on. And also just general strategy too for how I'm approaching this slate, because there's very odd staggered start times and we're missing a shit ton of injury news now. So I'm going to rattle off a bunch of the players that are listed as questionable right now, just for a frame of reference for everybody. I think already you laid out the start times of the games, EMac, which I think is pretty pivotal for this slate, but we've got LeBron James questionable. I assume that he's playing, but still officially questionable in the injury report. Tyler Hero is questionable. Bradley Beal is questionable. Clint Capella is questionable. Jaden Ivey is questionable. Michael Porter Jr. is questionable. Caleb Martin questionable. Steven Adams questionable. Killian Hayes questionable. John Conchar questionable. Bruno Fernando questionable. Monty Morris questionable. Gabe Vincent questionable. Isaiah Jackson questionable. These are all players who could really impact my lineups. So here's how I'm approaching this slate, at least how I'm building lineups right now. I do not think I'm going to have very much exposure to the first game of the slate. I'm going to have a little bit to Shake Milton. Other than that, though, I want to give myself openings in my lineups. I want to be free to be able to make some swaps. And Shake Milton for me is going to project as a pretty good points per dollar play regardless. So he's somebody who's going to make it into lineups. But beyond him, I just don't have very much interest in the first game of the slate. And then as news comes out, I'm going to be making changes and swaps as the night goes on. So I don't really know exactly who I'm going to be rostering now. I have a decent idea of some of the players I'll be targeting, but there could be an immense amount of value that opens up from a team like Washington, which we saw the other day. After they ruled basically everybody out, you get these scenarios where, like, all right, if Beal, Monty Morris, and Hachimura, if none of them play, Jordan Goodwin, Will Barton, these guys come into play. And otherwise are not considerations at all if all the players who are currently questionable end up playing for the Wizards. So if I'm you guys, I would not totally write off the first game. Like I said, I'm getting some exposure to Shake Milton, but give yourself as much flexibility as possible.
Absolutely. And much like you, I'm foregoing that first game. There's just too many things going on. But quickly, let's hit it just in case people are playing some Showdown, some people are playing a few people from it, or you are worried about some FOMO. Let us explain why it's not that crucial of an item. Even though Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and James Harden are all out with their respective foot injuries, and Matisse Thybulle, University of Washington, has been ruled out as well. It's really not a spot where we're getting the value that we were previously. That's because Milton and Melton have both seen their salaries increase appropriately for their new roles. They have become neutral values, but with so many other and better news that is we're waiting on, there's no reason to worry about them. Same thing can be said for Tobias Harris. His salary is ticked up enough. Don't even mess around with Paul Reed. On the other side, for the Magic, you do have Paulo Banchero. He is back. He has missed the last 2 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how much he plays. There's no reason to push him too hard. I would suspect somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes feels about right. Cole Anthony is still out. Wendell Carter Jr. doubtful, or probably questionable, but he has missed 3 of the last 4 games with this plantar fasciitis. You're going to have Moritz Wagner available for the first time all season. That just gums things up. And then you have Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner, who are neutral plays for where they're at right now. So there's really nothing to miss out on that game. If we quickly look at the game after that at 7:30, that's going to be Portland at New York. A little bit more interesting for that one, because if Eubanks is out, that could send a few more minutes over towards Yusuf Nurkic.
Eubanks
There's a lot
is
of good centers. Oh, is he out? Okay,
yeah,
there's a lot of good centers. So, there we go. Yep, I guess that came out 20 minutes ago. I hadn't hit refresher. So all right. So Nurkic is on the short list of about 8 players at center. So again, this is not jam everything in on that one. And then when we look at the New York side of things, they have Mitchell Robinson back. Derrick Rose is out. But what are we going to do here? Well, perhaps we look at some Jalen Brunson over on No House Advantage. That I would still like to do, especially in their versus contest when you're playing against other gamers. But really, from a DFS perspective, these first 2 games, I think we can just set aside.
Yeah, and by the way, I should mention, it's something that Adam has brought up the last couple of times we talked about the Philadelphia 76ers value, but Saben Lee is available to play for Philadelphia today. If he is in the rotation, he's not going to massively make a difference. He's not going to be a guy that goes out and plays 20 to 25 minutes, but he could potentially siphon some minutes away from guys like Melton or Milton or any of the bench guys, which here's the difference it makes. If it means that Melton and Milton each play, say, 34 minutes instead of 36, it does make them a little bit less appealing. So Saben Lee being in the mix, just kind of something interesting that was just announced.
All right. I did not realize he was with that team.
Yeah, he just signed with them. It was but mostly because they're so shorthanded. They did it to fill out some depth.
Okay, that makes sense. All righty. I saw some people ask me, how much did I have to deposit to get all those crowns? No, I play the milestone achievement game, and I look for deals, especially doing the missions over there on the sports books and stuff like that. So that's how I've gotten most of my DK crowns. Fortunately, I've been lucky enough that I never really had to redeposit. I had a nice little win 12 years ago, and essentially I've just built that up. So yes, I move money around, but I haven't gone in the red. Have I had losing years? Yes, I've had 2 losing calendar years thus far. But I don't I don't play enough to completely go at risk. I play about 100K a year. I probably make between 10 and 15K a year, but that does count the rake back programs, which now for me, someone at my level of gaming, like Adam plays that in a 2-week span, my level of gaming, it works out to a couple percentage points. So it's actually worthwhile to do it. Plus it's fun. It's the game within the game. I did explain a lot of this on the high stakes podcast with Neil Orfield. I'll drop that YouTube link in chat. That's a fun one that he does every couple of weeks, talking about mostly high stake gamers. Emergency fill in EMac popped on a show there with him. But since as someone who's been around here for a long time, this is more of a passion of mine to let people know, how do you keep having fun? How do we not spend a lot of money? And let's try not to redeposit. One of the best ways to do that is like sites like No House Advantage, where they're just giving away overlay or making it available. You still have to monetize it, earn it by creating your good lineups, your good player prop cards there, but you get a better chance at getting more bang for your buck. Deposit bonus is another way to do that. You can get those at No House Advantage as well, at least for your first one. If you go in the link below, through the link below us here in this description, go into No House Advantage, you'll give a $50 deposit bonus on your first deposit. So if you put in 20, they'll give you 20, put in 50, you get 50, put in 100, you get 50 because it's a $50 deposit bonus, but that money comes out of your funds first. So helps you get your sea legs on some of the new sites. So those are just some little quick tips and tricks.
We just got some news, by the way.
I was just going to say, when's the next wave of news coming
out? Constantly. So we just got from the Houston Rockets that Şengün is out. That was expected because he was doubtful, but Bruno Fernando is going to play. I was really hoping that Bruno Fernando was not going to play. And I was actually under the assumption that he wasn't going to. So the reason I didn't want him to play is this would have opened up a pretty big void in the Houston Rockets front court, where we would have had, the potential for Usman Garuba to start and play really big minutes. We would have had the potential for Tari Eason, who is a tournament play that I was going to like a whole bunch, to end up getting extended minutes. Now that Bruno Fernando is also in the mix, it makes none of these guys really all that appealing to me, because between Garuba, Fernando, Eason, now I think just all of these guys play like 20 to 22 minutes or something like that. Whereas before, I thought we had the chance for upper 20s minutes for Garuba. Eason could have played mid 20s minutes. So,
did you say Şengün was out as well?
Şengün is out, but Bruno Fernando is
in. Oh, so you were hoping the double. Okay, sorry. I thought it was single trigger on that one. My bad. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, all good. It just means that there isn't really all that. There just isn't all that much value to be had in the Houston Rockets front court now.
All right. I see Cedric Phillips is in the chat. Shout out to Cedric. If you guys ever get a chance to listen to one of his podcasts or video game announcing efforts, he makes this stuff sound pretty cool. It's very good. Fun guy to hang out with as well. So shout out to Cedric. All righty. Let's look here at so who do you think at this point in time are the studs to pay up for? I mean, Giannis is definitely going to be on the short list. I would suspect that Karl Anthony Towns, we have a plethora of guards on this site. That's where Giannis tends to be a little bit better. Power forward center on DK, power forward, small forward on FanDuel gets additional utility there, which I like for those of you playing on the blue side. What are you seeing at the tippy top here?
Yeah, so I'm running lineups right now because I have to remake them, because I was under the assumption that there was going to be that there was not going to be Bruno Fernando tonight. So now that he's in, that's going to mix up some stuff for me. At the high end, I know you mentioned Giannis there. I've had a really hard time getting up to guys like Giannis and Luka Doncic as of late. Just from this standpoint, they're so much more expensive than everybody else. So when you have this tier of players where it's like, Giannis is in the mid 12K range. Luka, I know he's not playing tonight, but a lot of times that we've seen recent slates with him where he's been, 12,800. I just don't get to them very often in the optimizer, because you get guys like, the SGA, Trae Young, Devin Booker type players who are thousands of dollars less expensive that kind of have a comparable ceiling. So for me on the high end, I actually don't really get to Giannis all that often. The most expensive guy that I'm getting to right now at a decent clip is actually Steph Curry. I think that Curry is a totally different fantasy player this year than he's been in previous years. For number one, the Warriors bench is so shitty this year that they just have to run their starters out for bigger minutes. So that's helped boost the ceiling of Steph Curry. But in addition to that, the assist rate is higher, the rebound rate is higher. So in the past, when Curry was really scoring dependent, and it's not quite the same case now, he's somebody who could also add some more peripherals than he has in the past. So at the very high end, he's the guy I get to the most, but I don't know that there's going to be somebody all the way at the top that really becomes a priority for me. This does seem like a slate, at least as of now, where kind of like the mid-range / upper mid-range is more so where I pay up at.
That sounds reasonable. Yeah, Curry's in the midst of, well, I mean, we're 14 games, or he's played 14 or 15 games. But his best career fantasy output of his career, it'll regress back below 50 fantasy points, but it's still pretty damn good. He's someone that obviously helped change the game. This game now suits him, and I think Klay Thompson being a little step slower, Draymond being a little step slower, perhaps a few rebounds bounce closer there towards Curry. He is always a triple-double threat, or he doesn't ever quite get there, but he is like a 30, 7 boards, 8-9 assists kind of guy on a really good night with gusts up to 40. That's just amazing production because he can get it so quickly. You can have 3 trips down the court and he nails 3 threes. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, when did that happen? So that's why he is always so dynamic in tournaments. The floor, as you mentioned, seems to be so much better this year with the thinner the bench. How do you feel if LeBron James plays? Does that dissuade you from the rest of the Lakers as well as LeBron as they take on the Spurs?
Yes. So, and by the way, my assumption is that LeBron is going to play, and it's tricky because LeBron, EMac, how many games would you guess LeBron James has been listed as questionable for in the last 2 years?
I don't know about the last 2 years, but let's say all of them.
It's been almost all of them. So all the
you actually know the answer?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's been way more that he has than he has.
A vast majority. Let's leave it at that.
So here's what I don't like about the situation is all reports leading up to today were that LeBron James, the team was anticipating that he was going to come back, and then they list him as questionable. But I kind of have to take it seriously because he's actually been hurt this time. So I can't have it as a normal LeBron situation where it's like, oh, well, it's a fake injury. I know it's a real injury. He hasn't played in a couple of weeks. So I would like to say, yes, LeBron is going to play. And I do think he's much more likely to play than not. But I can't just make it a foregone conclusion that he's going to be in because he's been out for so long. So, by the way, we just got some Heat news, too, that could kind of be interesting is that some guy, Drew Smith, they just signed to a contract and is available to play. So the reason that matters is the Heat could be extremely shorthanded. This is just another warm body if they have out there to soak up minutes. But assuming LeBron does end up playing, which I hope is the case because it takes a team out of consideration for us, then yeah, it would make the Lakers overall much less interesting, especially because AD has been so good without LeBron. And this would just be a big hit to the usage rate that Anthony Davis has. So I'm hoping LeBron plays, and then I just don't really have to consider the Lakers very much.
All right. I wanted to see who else was popping as potential oddities here. Talk to me a little bit about Ja Morant. Going here against the short, and the Pelicans. So Pelicans are going to be without CJ McCollum. He is in the health and safety protocols. You have Memphis is without Desmond Bane. And we've got John Conchar questionable. Steven Adams is questionable. Trey Murphy on the New Orleans side is going to play. That probably tempers a little bit of our Herbert Jones interest there. But we are with the absence of McCollum, he's giving up 18, or this will have to be backfilled. 18 points, almost 19 field goal attempts, half a dozen assists, a few rebounds here and there. How do you see that being at least distributed in some sort of fashion where the opportunities are going to go? Does that uptick Zion for you, or Ingram? Alvarado is a name that keeps coming up in chat. And I'm assuming that Jones is going to slide out of contention here with Trey Murphy around.
Yeah, so Alvarado is one of the best value plays on the slate. We just got Wizards news, which is not as conclusive as I would like it to be because we got a couple players ruled out, which is good because we just found out that there's going to be no Monty Morris and there's going to be no Rui Hachimura for the Wizards, but Bradley Beal is a game time decision. So I was hoping that we would just find out that Beal is out or either in or out, because that would just make this simpler. But he's the most important piece to that news from the Washington Wizards. So Hachimura is out. Monty Morris is out. I don't think individually that is going to change a lot for me. But if Bradley Beal is ruled out, then the Wizards are another really good value spot.
No, that makes sense. Bringing us back into the Pelicans here, we're getting a question Grimes or Alvarado on DK, and then you can kick back off with the
Sure. So I do think that these are two of the best overall value plays on the slate. I think that there are guys that we should both be getting exposure to. Of the two of them, though, I lean towards Jose Alvarado. Grimes also, I assume, is going to start. We've seen him play pretty big minutes in the last couple of games for the Knicks. Cam Reddish is out. Derrick Rose is out. I assume that means Grimes in the starting lineup. Now he's very shitty as a pointsman and fantasy producer. You know when that doesn't matter, though, EMac? When you play a lot of minutes. If you're somebody who's close to min price, he's 3,500 on DK, he's the flat min on FanDuel at 3,500. If he's going to play 34 minutes, you could be a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy, and you could have a pretty good result relative to your price point if you're getting that many minutes. So I think that makes Quentin Grimes appealing. But on the other side, Alvarado has to be the stronger play of the two for me, although I'm going to be getting a whole bunch of exposure to both just because Alvarado is the better fantasy producer. And another thing, too, is he's also going to be in a much more favorable situation here for the Pelicans. Now, people could look at the minutes for Alvarado and say, all right, well, he played 30 last game, whereas Grimes has played 32 and 33 in the last couple. But that Spurs-Pelicans game was not competitive. It was decided by 19 points. It was more or less over by halftime. Alvarado could have played 34, 35, 36 minutes had that game been competitive. So I think he's right now the best overall value play on the slate.
All right. Super chat here. We'll get to that in a sec. Do you have anything you want to expound upon for Ingram or Zion?
No, not really. There are players who, if you got them in lineups, I would not say there's anything wrong with that. I think they both have upside, particularly with there being no McCollum in the mix. But with that said, also, they're just kind of guys that exist on the slate. Neither of them are priorities.
All right, to DC24, the super chat says, with the Jazz getting killed on the boards, do you like Looney at 4K? Sort of my quick answer to that is no. He tends to have his minutes capped around low 20s. Not really capped, but he doesn't play much more than that very frequently. In his last 6 games, he's got 28 and 23 as his 2 best. Everything else is below 21. His per 36 numbers, his rebounding rate last year was just over 12 rebounds per 36. He's down to around 10 right now. It just doesn't seem like a great spot because they really don't have to run him into the ground. And we just see time and time again, worst case scenario, Kuzma's in there. Draymond's not hurt this year. And when everybody is going to be playing for Golden State, they need to bank some wins. They're still 2 games under 500 here, 4 for their they've lost 4 of their last 10 or 4 of their last 6, something like that. They can't really screw around with people running thin. And I just think Looney's kind of just a piece there. He has a role. He's got a specific in the rotation. He has specific duties. And obviously, even without Wiseman back down in the G League to get some actual experience instead of just sitting on the bench and watching the games, that really hasn't impacted Looney either. So I think there's really no upside with him. I think we liked him a lot in the playoffs because expanded minutes, shortened bench, all of that, we're not getting that on a regular season.
Correct. And another thing, too, is one of the reasons Looney played extended minutes in the playoffs, beyond it just being high leverage games, he played out of his mind in the playoffs. It's a level of play we've never seen from him before. And he's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but he's not as good as he was in the playoffs. And there just isn't a need for him to go out and play 30, 32 minutes. So honestly, where we have 13 games, there's a lot of options. I'm not going to really be getting to Looney just because there are better plays. It doesn't mean he projects poorly on a points per dollar basis. There are just a lot of other guys that project better on a points per dollar basis.
Right. Where I saw we had another piece of news come in. So the Wizards, we kind of mentioned Hachimura and Morris are out. Don't have a starting lineup for them yet. Juan Toscano Anderson is playing or available for the Lakers. Perhaps that means we get some LeBron clarity early, or at least before we go off air at 7:30. We'll keep monitoring this because we're still waiting on that Bradley Beal. He's in that bolus of the 8:00 games there. So back to expounding on Grimes just a little bit. I had waved off most of the second game. That doesn't mean I won't get to some people. I don't think I'll get to much more than 20% or so of Grimes. Is that kind of where you are as well?
It's hard to say because right now I get to a lot of him. I don't know how much of that I'm going to change before the Knicks game starts, but I assume that there are 2 players that I'll be getting to a good amount of in that Knicks Blazers game. One of them, Quentin Grimes, and the other one being Yusuf Nurkic. I think that those are 2 players who I'm going to most likely have more than 20% of.
Now I didn't realize that people could hear me spinning the wheel of my mouse, the little dial button. But Eric Lindquist in chat is mentioning that's music to his ears. My apologies to everyone. I didn't think you had to listen to it. I think it's kind of a soothing sound, but that is that impressive technology.
It's EMac ASMR.
Yes, it's see, look, there it is.
There you go. Yeah, listen, you could be like one of those girls on social media. You put on a bathing suit and you do some like ASMR stuff.
I have no idea what ASMR is.
It's something. Tyler strikes me somebody who would have ASMR. It's not an insult. It's just
that's definitely an insult to say I just know what ASMR means. No, but it's just like when people talk weird into the microphone, EMac. I don't know, it freaks me out, to be honest.
All right, so it's
autonomous sensory meridian response.
Yeah, so it's some sort of like sensory response people have where they hear certain noises and sounds and it just soothes them, like almost like a hypnotic type thing.
Okay.
I don't have it because I think I don't have the attention span for it, but it's just a thing that I think it impacts, like, I don't know, a third of people get it.
So did you ever see that Howard Stern movie?
Yes.
So like when the girl's sitting on the speaker and Howard is talking to her, is it like that?
No, not exactly, but I think that could be enjoyable for other reasons.
All right, I'm waiting for that to get into chat there. So, all right, well, yes, that not part of my repertoire. Lamar Stevens out with an illness. Goran Dragic available for Chicago. Jalen Green will be in. Is that tweaking anything for Houston there for you?
No, because he was probable, so I just kind of assumed that he was going to play. So nothing really changes on that front. The really important Houston news for me was going to be that status update on Bruno Fernando. Like I said, I was hoping he was going to be out. He was listed as questionable, but he's in, so it kind of puts that front court in flux a little bit.
All righty, I see the boss man, Alex Baker, is in chat. I better be on the old P's and Q's here because, I'd like to keep doing these shows because they're
no more updates on your childhood fantasies and listening to Howard Stern.
No, we're gonna let those go. Baba Booey. There we go. Does anybody even know what that means anymore? He's pretty irrelevant at this point, right?
I mean, Howard Stern in general doesn't have the same cultural relevance that he did, 20, 25 years ago. But I assume that most people know that he's the producer of the Howard Stern Show.
Okay. All righty. I was never
Baba Booey is the
for
Jordan
that show.
Klein. He's the Jordan Klein of these parts.
Okay. That's fair. I did like
use
it
your
when
name,
it was
Tyler, but I think Jordan's a little more well known along these parts.
Oh.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Exactly.
That's very well. Me too, Tyler. Me too. All righty. Let's see what else is on the docket here. Let's remind everybody that they have 72 more hours to take advantage of the Black Friday sales here. That is using promo code THANKS because we appreciate you all. So promo code THANKS gets you a full week of everything Stokastic, all the projections for all the sports, the tools, the lineup builder tools, the 1-versus-1 tools, the boom bust, the stack tools, everything for 1 week. And boy, we have a lot of sports coming on, especially with college basketball right now, rivalry weekend for college football. We've got World Cup, we've got hockey, all sorts of stuff going on. But promo code THANKS gets you everything for $5. $5, pretty good. Pretty good deal. We also have a BetMGM deal. It's the no-brainer bet. It's back. Bet $10 if you're a new user on BetMGM. Win $200 if any team scores a goal during the World Cup. Hint, they've already scored goals during the World Cup. So all you got to do is go into the pinned comment up top or the below us here in the description. Click on that and create your BetMGM account and put in $10. Once you bet $10 on wait for it, has to be a World Cup money line bet. So we can do that tomorrow. There's more soccer tomorrow. You will get $200 as soon as that is completed. It's a pretty good deal. The wording's a little funky. They've assured us everybody's going to get $200 if they come in through this link, make a $10 money line World Cup bet. Once that bet settles, you'll be getting the $200 promotion.
Yeah, and by the way, the other thing too, so just to explain what the wording on the landing page means. So if you guys click on there, you're going to say, and it's going to say if there's a goal scored, it means if there's a goal scored in any World Cup game. Well, there's already been a goal scored in the World Cup game, so it's already won. So you place $10 on the money line, the game settles, you're going to win $200 regardless of the result there.
Yes, thank you, because it's the no-brainer. They want to get you over on the site trying things out. All right. Oh, LeBron James update. Still questionable.
There we go. I hate those updates. I
never adductor muscle.
Yeah, I never understand what the point of the updates where it's like he was questionable 15 minutes ago, and guess what? Still questionable. It was really no information gained from that. We did have a question relating to Bruno Fernando from Jets World, who says, if Fernando is starting, does that make him a viable play on DK in a high dollar GPP? No, not for me. Bruno Fernando he's had some okay games this year, but also keep in mind that he hasn't been healthy as of late. And I don't think that we're going to see him play extended minutes. I'm going to pull up his box score really quickly.
Didn't he kind of have a few Halzino Neto ceremonial starts earlier this year? Remember when Neto, when he was with the Jazz and he started like 70 games a year and he averaged 17 minutes a game as the starter? That to me feels like Bruno Fernando.
Well, I think that's what it's going to be for all the Houston guys in the front court. I think Garuba, Eason, and Bruno Fernando are all just going to kind of split the minutes. And by the way, even if Fernando does end up starting, to answer Jets World's question, he hasn't played since October 21st. It's very unlikely to me that he would come off a month-long absence and be a guy who just plays a bunch of minutes. And to EMac's point, he has started, well, he's played 2 games this year. He started in both of them. The first game of the year, he got a full minutes allowed and played 25 minutes. He gets hurt in the second game of the year, so we don't even know what his playing time would have looked like. But considering that the first time we saw him totally unrestricted, he played 25 minutes, it's hard to think that he's going to play north of that. So to me, I would stay away from him.
Moving along here. Let's see what else we got. No other news really popping. Let's see what we got in chat. Anybody got a little in the Discord here? Throw us some love. That's where you just got that question. For those of you that are in the Stokastic Discord, you can @ us. That is one of the features that we have. You can also reach out to us even when we're not on shows, and we're happy to chat with you, answer questions. Plus, there's a whole set of like-minded gamers that can answer a lot of questions as well. Yes, you can join Discord, but you got to be a premium member to get into the vast majority of the channels. That is kind of the point of, or the benefit, one of the many benefits of being a premium member. That $5 offer, promo code THANKS, does get you access to the Discord for a whole week. Do you like Jaw as a pay-up option from Gangrene in the Discord?
Yeah, and I'm going to pull up the on-off court numbers for Jaw this year when Desmond Bane hasn't been on the court, and they've been pretty crazy numbers. So I know that some of those is going to come where there was no Jaren Jackson or no Dylan Brooks, but on the whole, this has been an elite fantasy producer when we've taken Desmond Bane off, who's played a really significant role for the Grizzlies this year and has been one of the more improved players. So I'm running a query on that right now, just seeing the overall numbers for Morant. Because off the top of my head, I think Morant is something like a 1.7 fantasy point per minute fantasy producer this year when we take Bane off the court. And all right, so here we go. Per 36 minutes, EMac. These are the numbers we're looking at for Ja Morant. 35 points, 7.5 assists, 7.5 rebounds, 57.66 fantasy points for DraftKings purposes per 36 minutes without Desmond Bane on the court.
That's 1.3 highlight dunks.
Yes, a lot of highlight dunks, which is also why we talked before about players like Giannis, and it's been hard for me to pay up for them. Well, if I have somebody like Ja Morant that's $2,000 less expensive, $1,500 less expensive, these are the type of guys who it's just far more likely that they're going to have these kind of slate-breaking games relative to their price than Giannis. Because for Giannis to get there for a ceiling perspective, you're going to need like 75, 80 fantasy points, and it's just hard for him to hit up those kind of numbers. Whereas somebody like Morant scoring something like 65 or 60 is just more realistic of an outcome, especially when you consider that he's putting up 57.66 per 36 minutes without Desmond Bane on the court this year. So I do like Morant quite a bit in large field tournaments.
All righty, couple more here in from my nemesis Melissa. She's asking strongest DK cash games or cash game plays.
Sure. So first, let me refresh the ownership. And actually, Tyler, can we pull the ownership up on the screen? It always helps to kind of make some cash game considerations, is just to compare some of the players that I would be projecting really highly with also the most popular players, because cash games kind of the inverse of tournaments, where in general in cash games, you probably want to be on some of the more chalky players. So that will help guide us here. And I know that we got an update in the ownership not all that long ago. And some of the players that are projected to be the most owned overall today, I do think make for a really strong cash game. So to the top value plays that EMac and I have already talked about. And did she specify whether it was a DraftKings or FanDuel question? DraftKings. All right. We could do it for FanDuel after this as well. But Jose Alvarado.
That would be very fair on a Friday. Let's do that.
Yeah, of course. Quentin Grimes, Jose Alvarado. I think these are the two best points per dollar plays on the cheap end on DraftKings. I think they make for really good cash considerations. Colin Sexton as well at $4,600. It makes sense that he would be here from the standpoint of there's no Mike Conley. He's been starting for the team. And I know the production hasn't been otherworldly for Sexton, but still, if we're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes for Sexton, I do like that. Now we have to start talking about some of the pay-up options and who our favorite pay-up option would be in cash games. And for me, I'm actually going to gravitate towards Steph Curry. He's the guy who I get to, like I said before, the most exposure on the high end. So my three favorite value plays are the three most popular, my pay-up option. And there isn't really one pay-up option that's above all of the rest in terms of ownership or where they're being projected on DraftKings today. But the one that I'm getting to is Steph Curry. So that would be my recommendation there. Now looking at the FanDuel slate, kind of some similar sentiments. Colin Sexton, Jose Alvarado, I think both of them make sense. I love Nurkic on FanDuel as well. I think he's a really strong play on DraftKings, but FanDuel particularly, $6,100. The absence of Drew Eubanks, here's what really makes a difference for Nurkic. His minutes have been all over the place this year. They've been very, very hard to predict. But now that Eubanks is out of the mix, I think this really shores up the minutes because they don't have this backup center to just take away some of the playing time from Nurkic. And we saw a game, 3 games ago or so for Portland, where Eubanks just played more minutes than Nurkic, where it was just a game flow thing. It wasn't because they think Eubanks is better, but Nurkic got off to a slow start. Eubanks came in, the Blazers went on a run. They just kind of rode with them and it limited Nurkic's minutes. That's not something that has the potential to happen with Eubanks out of the mix. So Nurkic is one of my favorite center plays. I think he makes a whole bunch of sense today.
All righty. You know, it makes sense playing over there on No House Advantage. We are 14 minutes before lock, not to fear. They're going to have us on for another 30 minutes. So you're going to get 45 minutes with us. However, their contests do lock at 7 o'clock. There is no late swap there. So your lineups need to be in. Couple tricks. Don't pick players who are hurt. Think you're going to get cute and pick Clint Capella because he's not in and take his unders. You will not get any points for that bet. Click the link below us here to go join No House Advantage. And with your first deposit, you will also get up to a $50 deposit match. Put in $50, they'll give you another 50. Put in 20, you get 20. Put in 100, still get 50 because that is a $50 deposit match. Right now, the contest is 42% full for their large contest. $15 to get in, $5K to first. Bit of a price bump for you guys, not to fear. You got the $5 version of that contest tonight. That is $1,000 to first. There are 209 entries right now out of 480. That caps at 35 entries. People generally do not go racing into that one. They go for the more top, the bigger bucks at the top. The $15 version, so you can get into that. I do want to point out they have NFL. They run NFL 1 o'clock games, NFL 4 o'clock games, and all the island games. Last week was I think the most full that their NFL main slate had been in at least 7 weeks that I've been playing, and it was 65% full. That means that you have to monetize this overlay, but they are paying out 35% more than the gamers are putting in. It's a pretty good deal. So check that out. We have free projections for you for No House Advantage, football and basketball. And oh, by the way, we've created the optimal lineups for you as well. You create your player cards with 10 questions on the basketball and football main slates. You rank them with confidence points 10 through 1. You choose the over or under of the prop they have listed. Those props, by the way, are static for the peer versus peer games. Think of those like salaries. DraftKings and FanDuel don't change the salaries when news comes out. No House Advantage doesn't change those props because that is their version of salary. So those are static. So check it out over there. A lot of good times at No House Advantage. 13 minutes to go. Only one game locking at 7. Let's look at some of these questions here in our our Discord chat. The job versus Zion.
EMac, we have some super chats too.
Oh shoot! Let's go get those then quickly. Don't worry, we'll be back to you as well. Regular chat. Do we have a lot of super chats? Oh, I see at least Weatherman 7. What does that look like, Greg? It looks like he's telling us to work out after Thanksgiving. He's got a pair that is pumping some weights.
Keep it up.
Very important. Very important.
Eric, that's what she said.
Yeah, Eric Traub, if Adams is out, would it be viable to go with Brandon Clark or would you go with Jaren Jackson Jr.?
So both of them become stronger options in that scenario. But with that said, let me pull up the price for Brandon Clark on DK and FanDuel because I don't remember off the top of my head. He is $5,000 over on FanDuel. Would be certainly a playable price point, but wouldn't make him like any kind of must-have type guy. Brandon Clark is $4,200 on DraftKings. If we see no Steven Adams, I presume that we would see Clark move into the starting lineup. I would be swapping onto as much Clark as I possibly could in that scenario.
Okay. How do you feel about Jokic tonight? No site or other context. So general thoughts, please.
I prefer some of the cheaper guys. It also sucks that he's center eligible only because there are other center plays that I just like to get to a lot. So I mentioned before, my favorite overall center right now is Jusuf Nurkic. And it's just really prohibitive when somebody's only center eligible like Jokic. Remember last year, FanDuel randomly decided like, hey, Joel Embiid and Jokic, they both get power forward and center eligibility. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now we can only play them at center on FanDuel. DraftKings, at least there is the utility spot. But in general, his upside has not been the same this year when both Murray and Michael Porter Jr. have been in the lineup. Now, I know that Porter Jr. is questionable to play today, but it's just a different scenario. Last year, he had nobody to compete with for usage, and we saw a little bit of it last game. He still has that upside when those guys are out, but Murray's going to be playing today. It really does change the equation. So Jokic is not really something I'm getting to.
All right. I think those are all the super chats. Tyler, can you let me know if I missed any? I hit 3 going back to when we were talking about the AMSR.
I think we hit on all the super chats. We just have some questions in Discord to get to.
All right. Let's go back over there. Thoughts? Oh, good one here. Thoughts on Okongwu without Clint Capella tonight?
Well, Capella is currently questionable, so that makes a big difference.
If he's out. Sorry.
Okay. If he's out, then yeah, Okongwu becomes a really good play. If Capella's in, no reason to roster Okongwu, but Okongwu should start if there's no Capella. And I'll pull up some of Okongwu box scores here. Because Okongwu last year made a handful of starts at center. This year, he is not. But last year, we saw him start a handful of games without Capella. In those games, he put up 13, 41, 34, 20, and 23 fantasy points. So in general, the floor was fairly high. There was one really bad game where he had a dud, but we saw a 34 fantasy point game. We saw a 40 fantasy point game. And Okongwu, his price for today is $3,700 over on DraftKings, and on FanDuel he is $4,000. That's a very affordable price point that I would like on both sites. I assume that if there was no Capella, I'd probably have Okongwu projected probably in the neighborhood of high 20s fantasy points. He would probably end up being like 28, 29. So he's averaging right around a fantasy point per minute this year. And last year, actually played pretty big minutes last year in his start. So maybe I'd have to give him a little more. Yeah, he'd be right around 30 fantasy point as a projection if he starts at center. So that would make him a pretty obvious play.
All right. News God, courtesy of News God, just dropped me a link.
Well, in fairness, that just came out 30 seconds ago. And the question was from before then. So
this is not to correct you. This is just to enhance the experience.
No. I'm saying to the audience.
Okay. See how valuable News God is, though?
Yeah.
Now, he may not send each of you a direct message like he did to me, but he does put them in all of our Discord alert channels. So technically, he sends the alert to everybody that is a paying member here at Stokastic. All righty. That was kind of fun. There's some overlay brewing on the various other sites. Not nowhere near as good as it is on No House Advantage, but there's some over there on DK and some on Yahoo. So throwing that out there. Back to some questions. 4K plays.
Sorry, 1 sec.
Yes.
Just to now that Capella is officially ruled out, just to reiterate, Okongwu is a really strong play, and John Collins as well, because Collins should play some of the backup center minutes. And there's also more opportunities for rebounds for John Collins. So I think this is an upgrade for John Collins, but Okongwu is the more obvious and strong beneficiary.
All right. I am now entering way more than I normally enter in these types of contests. So there we go. That's fun because I'm going to, when we're off air, I'm going to go make some dinner, feed the dog, who I'm surprised hasn't broken the door down yet because it is dinner time for her. And then I'm going to make some lineups because I'm going to punt these games off until later. But I do have Nurkic in and I do have Grimes in. So there we are. All righty. Would you prefer Nurkic or Drummond as upside center for single entry?
Nurkic.
Yahoo cash plays are the Phillies, I'm assuming saying, are Philadelphia players still viable? Let's go real quick.
I have not built lineups on Yahoo, so I'd have to look off the top of my head. I assume so, but let's see. So what is Shake Milton's price on Yahoo? Yes, Shake Milton's $15. That is extremely playable. Anthony Melton's $26. Harris,
that's neutral. Collins is $12. Colin Sexton, that is. Sorry. Jose Alvarado is a key. He's $10. Quentin Grimes is small forward. He's $10. Those would be your key people. Milton, and I agree. Milton at 15 is good. Sorry, I am playing over there, so I'm looking at it.
Yeah, the pricing there has not adjusted in the same way that FanDuel and DraftKings has for the Sixers injuries. Very playable there. In fact, I would consider Milton a must play in cash games if you're playing on Yahoo.
Absolutely. All righty. Oh, here's one more super chat from we'll just go with more for tricks. $5 super chat. FanDuel tournaments. Tatum and Irving or Steph Curry and Jaylen Brown?
Steph Curry and Jaylen Brown on FanDuel, the question was, right?
Yes.
Yes.
EMac is rough. That must be, is that a good thing? Like Rough Riders?
Yeah. He means you beat people up.
Oh yeah. You don't want to ever run into me in a dark alley. You'd rather like a well-lit bar where I will buy you a drink and we can chat TFS. But yes, that is good. All righty, we've got back to our questions. Tari Eason on DK. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, so I think there's better value plays. And like I said before with Tari Eason, if I had to roster one of the big men from the Rockets, Eason would be my favorite option. But he's picking up ownership today. And I just think there's better value plays at this point. By the way, LeBron officially available to play now. So in terms of Tari Eason, like I would rather play Okongwu as a value option in the front court. And then other cheap guys, I prefer Alvarado. I prefer Quentin Grimes. So Eason, I wouldn't say he's unplayable, but I don't like him quite as much as the field does.
All right. Jets World is playing the 888 tonight. He wants to know, should he roll with Shake on DK or wait for better news?
So Shake is the only player from the first game of the slate that I'm playing. If he fits into your lineup, I have no problem with getting there, but I wouldn't jam in other guys from that game. Just because I think there's a pretty good chance that other better value options are going to open up. But I assume that Milton is going to be a good value play relative to the slate, kind of no matter what happens.
Okay. Send him a little note there because that is the 888, and we don't want him to miss that. Can you play John Collins and Okongwu on the same lineup? I see no issue with that.
That's fine. Okongwu is so cheap. And by the way, so is Collins. Relative to where we've normally seen Collins priced, this is not the typical price tag for him. So yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
Alrighty, we did talk about LeBron, Milton or Klay Thompson on DK. I would actually go Milton on that one.
That is Milton for me.
Is it okay to leave $700 in cash on the table on DK tonight?
I would. There are very few times I would ever think that it's okay to leave $700 on the table for a DK cash lineup. there's a pretty good chance you could upgrade somebody somewhere and make it a better player.
Right. Best center value, I'm assuming DK between 65 and 7,500.
That is Yusuf Nurkic.
Okay, I think that catches up most of those there. We got 4 minutes until a lock. You've got no house advantage, just for those of you following along. Let's refresh here and get a little update. Their big contest is 49% full, 582 out of 1,200. Again, these are good deals to get into. It's very important. Oh, please do hit the like button. Somehow Josh Engleman did not bestow 500 likes on us when we started our show, and I have not asked for them yet. We've got, 2,700 people watching? Let's get up to 500. It's not that hard. Hell, let's go to 600. And we'll stay on for an extra 30 minutes if we get up to 600 likes.
And what are we going to do if we don't?
Well, then I guess we just pull the plug. Producer's choice. Those are the rules. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, Alex. But those are the rules. Favorite single entry cash on DK 5K or less?
Favorite single entry cash play at any particular position?
Does not matter.
Okay. 5K or less. I am sorting by my projections and scrolling through 5K or less. There's a lot of names to sort through on a slate of this size. That is Sexton for me.
All right. I think Sexton's a solid option as well. All right. We are 90 seconds out. Fortunately, I am not playing anybody in this early game. I better double check and make sure my lineups, they're all from the 10 and 10:30 game. I'm good because I'm going to worry about the next wave of starts. We are doing a whole bunch of shows tomorrow. We'll talk about that. And then we are going to stay on for an extra 30 minutes here. But if we do look at tomorrow's schedule, I want to let you know that it's starting pretty early. We've got a lot of information to bestow to you. And why am I saying bestow? I don't know. We have a lot of information to pass along, and we think it's important. So we are going to start early. There is no MMA this week. So that is making our schedule a little bit different in addition to the holiday. But we do have the NBA strategy show at 10 o'clock. That will be featuring Ryan Patnick. You guys know him as Rinpack. He's guest appearing for Adam. On Saturday morning, we will have that for 11 o'clock, College Football Live Before Lock. One hell of a set of rivalry games tomorrow. We had some good ones today. We got some really good ones tomorrow as well. 1 o'clock, you're going to get Greg and Neil Orfield talking the NFL strategy show, covering all things tournament. At 4 o'clock, you're going to get the NBA Live Before Lock. That will be Greg returning with Matt LaMarca as well. So we've got lots of stuff going on, and there are 14 different videos on demand going out for various versions of college and pro football, and 6 for NBA. We got a lot of content here. You guys really should like, subscribe, and follow the various Stokastic channels. Orange or apple?
Orange or apple what?
I don't know. It's the choice.
Oh, okay.
Apple juice or orange juice? Definitely orange juice. Apple cider? Better than orange juice. Apple pie? Better than orange meringue by far. Who would want to eat that? And orange, you're glad I didn't say banana.
I'm not happy you said any of what you said, for being honest.
All right. Hey, guess what? We are at lock officially, but not everything is locked over on No House Advantage. So let's look at some of our versus the house. You ready to talk a little player props there, Greg? And then we'll see what other news trickles in. So we've got over at producer Tyler wants to do a screen share. That's okay. If not, I will just voice this over. But if you go to the versus the house, you can see that we have a lot of different choices here for sports. Right now we have college football, NBA, and NHL up. NHL, their next wave of games going off at 8 o'clock. They have a lot of shots on goal wagers are generally what they go with here. They also go with points. Points meaning a goal or an assist scored by a player. And of course, that'll almost always be 1/2. So you choose the over or under. And that one, these are dynamic props. So they will move based upon news. What we were talking about in the earlier game, those are their salaries. Those aren't going to move, but these will. We have Anthony Simons up here at the top, 23.5 points. That feels apropos without Damian Lillard out for a couple weeks with a sore calf.
I think that's a little low to me. Let me
think it's
pull
low?
up.
While you're doing that, you can also easily filter on these. If you click on the filter button, it brings up a player search. You can also sort by game. You can sort by positions. That's a little easier or more useful for NFL. But they're also working on something so you can sort by different stats. So that is key.
Yeah, so I have that projected a little bit towards the over, and the key thing, like you said right there, is that there is no Damian Lillard for them today. And something else to mention as well is if we go over to DraftKings, just use this as a point of reference to compare. The prop on Simons is also 23.5 there, but the over EMac, it's minus 135 on the over, which is a pretty good indication. If I'm looking at something like NHA or Prize Picks, and I'm going to compare it in Line Shop and compare it to odds at FanDuel or DraftKings, where there is none of the thing where either side is juiced at NHA, compared to a spot like a sportsbook like DraftKings, where it's minus 135 on the over, pretty good chance that means there's value there. So I do like the over on Simon, so I'm taking a side.
All right. I was hoping we get Jalen Brunson assists. Unfortunately, we just have points there. He's 20.5. Do you like that one? Perhaps you're more into Yusuf Nurkic. You said he's one of your favorite center options here. He's got 10.5 on his rebounds prop. That feels about appropriate. But if he is going to get a little more time without Eubanks floating around there, he can easily get there. He's just been up and down all season from what we have typically seen from him in years past.
Yeah, 10.5 is probably about fair. So I would avoid that number on Nurk. And the Simons one, I think, is a little bit more favorable. So I would be curious to know what they had the line for Nurkic prior to the Eubanks news. Not that we have any way of finding it out, but it was probably a rebound or two lower.
Yeah, a lot of these are points. So that a lot of the wagers I like are rebounds and assists or PRA. But points are the easiest to monitor, and they're building these out. You know, they aren't going to hang a whole bunch of lines out there and get gobsmacked on them because they're giving away all this money in their tournaments for you guys. So this is just a secondary thing, but they know there's a lot of interest as people are following along with their tournaments. And, for those of you in states that don't have sports wagering legalized yet, you can definitely scratch that itch over here with the parlay cards. You can build them out with 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions. You get 5 of 5 right. That's 21x, highest payout in the business. 4 of 4 is 11x, 3 of 3 is 5 of x, etc., etc. So check that out. A lot of fun over there at No House Advantage. All right, circling back here, pulling up the stuff. Santi Aldama and Xavier Tillman both out this evening for Memphis. We were kind of expecting that.
Yeah, give me the Adams update, the one that matters. Don't give me the players we don't care about, Memphis, because Aldama was listed as doubtful. I want to know that Steven Adams update, because that's one that could really matter. Curious, are there any Memphis props for the big men there? Because that could be impacted by if Steven Adams was to be ruled out. That's something we'd probably want to be reacting to fairly quickly.
All right, so we have it is Dylan Brooks. I'm not counting as a big, and then everything else is
okay.
New Orleans. They're a little savvy on these. Vinny C has a $5 super chat. Is PRA a better prop because getting 1 or 2 of the 3 wrong or right could outweigh getting the one that booms or busts? That's kind of it depends. And in some cases, you're going to want to have some cases you may just want to focus on points and rebounds. If you're looking at a big man like Clint Capella, who's going to maybe get an assist every other game, right? He's not playing tonight, but as an extreme example, whereas somebody like Yusuf Nurkic can get you a few assists now and then, or Vucevic or somebody else. So that's kind of an extreme example. So it's one of those, it depends. Sometimes you'll find a line that gets a little bit aggressive on one of them, and you may have a better lean on, Steph Curry's probably going to pass more in this game. I don't want just his points. I want two things. Or now, hey, he's also a sneaky good rebounder, averaging 6.7 rebounds per game this season, which is career high and slowly going to regress. But maybe I want his PRA. That's you want to start looking at that. There is no right or wrong answer, but there are varying degrees of success. But yes, to your point, you can help spread out your risk a little bit by if they're going off in one category and it's not the one you chose. Nice. However, when they kick ass in one of those categories and don't make it across the PRAs, you get salty. Trust me, I've been on both sides of this. Do you have a lean on that, or is that it's just going to salt the taste on this one? Right?
No, it's really hard to say there's a one size fits all answer, because there could be a scenario where I might say like, oh, Ben Simmons today, he's in a spot where maybe I think the over on his rebounds looks good, the over on his assists look good, but maybe I think the under on his points looks good, or I think the points are fair. So I know this isn't the answer that he wants, because I think that he would like there to be a clear cut, like which is the best to bet, but it's just going to be based on projections in which individual player props project the best relative to some projections. So it's hard to say that there's one right way to do it. I will say this though, when we get a scenario where players are ruled out and there's very limited amount of time to place bets and react to that kind of news, a lot of times the first props I will look at to quick bet are the points plus rebounds plus assists. So not saying this is a scenario, but using it as an example. Let's say Jason Tatum was to be ruled out today, and I was to place a player prop bet on Jaylen Brown. Considering it's something that I know I have, 20 seconds, maybe 30 to be able to react to that news and place bets. After betting, say, the King side of the game, the next thing I would bet in that scenario is I would look at the Jaylen Brown over points plus rebounds plus assists, because I know he's going to benefit in all those categories without Jason Tatum. So that's the first prop I would bet in that kind of scenario. Does that all follow?
It does for me. In premium Slack, Cream says that he pulled an Adam and got 5 different TVs for his kids at the DK store. Very nice. Very nice. He also has a question here. So let me go. I'll just look at it on my phone here. That will be easier. Tatum or Durant, speaking of Tatum, on the DK 88 contest.
Yeah. I prefer Tatum to Durant. One thing that's been really hard about Durant is that he's still priced for Kyrie Irving to be out, and Kyrie Irving is now back. Another thing also is that with Ben Simmons back in the starting lineup, that takes away some assists and the amount of time the ball is in Kevin Durant's hands. So the last couple of games for Kevin Durant, now that Ben Simmons is starting and also that Kyrie Irving is back in the mix, we've seen a couple of things. Number one, the assists are down a little bit for Kevin Durant, but the usage also down in a pretty significant way. The last 2 games with Kyrie back, 20 and a 23% usage rate for Durant. That's not going to hold. It's going to go up moving forward, but he's not going to have the same role in the offense with Simmons and Kyrie there that he did when those guys were out. And the price just hasn't adjusted yet. So if we go back and look at Durant's price earlier in the year, he was 10,000, 9,900, like around there. That's probably where we need to see Durant get to. So he's like $1,000 too expensive at the moment.
All right. So yes, sorry, my bad. We use Discord here at Stokastic for our subscribers. Greg, what do we use internally here at Stokastic?
It depends.
It would be Slack. So that's where I'm getting this confused. Plus, I'm an idiot and just refer to everything as Slack, much like you Xerox something or get me a Kleenex, etc. Deep breaths here. Deep breaths. Tyler, I wasn't wrong per se. I wasn't wrong, because how do I get the links to the shows that you produce? I get them in Slack, Tyler.
It's okay, Grandpa. It's okay.
All right, 21 minutes before I'm shouting at the rain in the dark.
For me. EMac right now is the gif of the old man who's trying to figure out how to use the computer, and he drags the computer into the trash can and the computer disappears. That's EMac right now.
Yes, absolutely. David Faber would like us to know that Capella is out. Thank you. Yeah. Ooh, super chat from Big Sus 420. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Steph Curry, DK Cash.
That is Curry for me.
All right. Best play $24 and lower on Yahoo. And is there anybody 18 or lower? So we lost the Philly game, but we still have every other game. We didn't lose it, but
it depends how he's asking this question. Is it just who's the best points per dollar play? Or if you could only play one guy who was $24 or below, who would I plug in?
I think he has enough he'd like to play someone around $24, and then he is figuring it'll leave him around 18 or less for his last. He looks like he's filling 2 spots, probably with $42.
All right. So for $42, Nurkic and Draymond Green. I think that would be it. Did he say what positions?
That's too hard to tell. I think he's already playing Okongwu and Alvarado. If you had to choose between Okongwu and Alvarado, I'd go Alvarado.
Same. But I think I think this should be helpful. The answer for me, if he has $42 to fill, it's Nurkic and Draymond.
All right, Joseph Corona, my apologies for missing your super chat. Type it in now, and I will start looking for it. Cedric Phillips, man, myth, and legend, says, why isn't there more conversation around Amir Coffey? He's $3,500, played 36 minutes in the Clippers' last game.
So the main reason is just because there's a lot of really good value on the slate. And the other thing, too, is Amir Coffey is not a very good points per minute fantasy producer, and I do not think that he's going to play those same minutes again. So he played 36, but keep in mind, too, that was a massively one-sided game where he got a bunch of blowout run. And I think it's probably more reasonable to expect he plays somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 minutes today. Unless maybe the game becomes a blowout again. But if not, I think he plays 30. And just in 30 minutes, Amir Coffey isn't as good of a value play as a lot of the other guys we have on the slate. Because Amir Coffey this year is playing, this is actually horrific. So he's playing 11 and a half minutes per game and averaging 6.5 fantasy points. I mean, we're looking at a guy who's barely scoring over half a fantasy point per minute.
You would automatically lock in Grimes before trying to maneuver and get Coffey in your lineup, correct?
Yes. Grimes over Coffey for me.
There's a fun story about Coffey. Grinds or coffee? Well, grounds, but we'll leave that for others to make.
Grimy Coffey.
Grimy Coffey. A little muddy. Thoughts on Denny? Denny Obdia, never play him. He will break your heart. Well, if you don't play him, he also has the capability of breaking your heart. I believe we just saw a career game from him. Don't expect that until after Christmas again.
Well, so we still need that update on Bradley Beal. That could potentially change a lot. So Beal is currently listed as questionable. If he doesn't play, that opens up a lot of playing time and usage for the Wizards. We just don't know. So everything we saw from him in the last game, it happened primarily because Bradley Beal didn't play. So let's see what ends up happening with Beal and his status.
All right. Who did I say to put it? Oh, Joseph Corona. Best 5. Oh, we did answer that, but Greg will run through it real quick. Best 5 FanDuel cash options, catching up on the super chat for Joseph Corona.
Sure. So for FanDuel cash, yeah, we actually did do this one.
He logged on late, so he was probably leaving the car and getting into because he doesn't want to watch the car after he typed in the super chat. He had to watch the road. Safety first.
So, well, maybe let me see if there are different answers I would have now. Well, actually, there would be a different answer now because Okongwu would be an answer, and at the time that I'd answered this, we didn't know that Clint Capella wasn't going to be playing. So, Okongwu would now be my cash center on FanDuel. Before it would have been Nurkic. So that's something that's definitely a little bit different. Let's see who else would be in that mix for me. So Okongwu at center, Alvarado and Sexton, Justice Winslow as a cheap option. And I would also add John Collins into the mix because Clint Capella is out.
All right. How much Justice Winslow are you getting?
I
believe the word is a metric crap load.
35%.
Okay, I'm at 50%. I don't feel bad. I'm not playing the same dollar volume you are, but that's a pretty hefty stand. I get where that's where I have it capped. I'll read mine off real quick and then I'm just going to upload these. So I have hit my cap at 50% with Alvarado, Grimes, Sexton, Winslow, and Okongwu. And then I don't have anybody else over, let's call it 24%. I had to cap Kelly Olynyk. He was coming in way too much. I didn't want to burn a center spot on him, but at 52, I prefer him on FanDuel where he's still power forward eligible. I think he's 5,000 flat there. He's 5,200 on DK. He's okay, but I'd rather get some other players.
Yeah, I mean, I think Olynyk more so on FanDuel than DraftKings is a good looking play, but I think he's a little bit overowned, and there are other players that I like a lot, especially. I mean, this value that we got in the Atlanta front court is something that didn't exist earlier in the day, and I assume Okongwu is still going to be popular. He's going to be very popular, but he's not going to be as popular as he was if the Clint Capella news came out this afternoon.
See here, we've got another question here. There must be a playing cash from the Blazers on DK. What is it?
I would have said Nurkic earlier. So my two most rostered centers are Okongwu and Nurkic. I think people have probably gathered that much by this point. It was Nurkic before, then we also got Okongwu in the mix. I get some more Okongwu than Nurkic. I wouldn't call Nurkic a must play, but my highest projected lineup does have both Nurkic and Okongwu in it.
All right, I see chat. Chat either loves me or hates me. They're laughing with me or laughing at me. This is a nice mix. Again, I've been asked to get some alpha brain for Christmas. Gray-haired gaming. Guess which demographic he's in? Because he says I'm here for the dad jokes. EMac, let him fly. Grandpa EMac is a few out there. Yeah, these are fun. EMac just playing in the quarter contest. Hey, yeah, until I hit my DK limit, I am. I am. But
which, by the way, everybody should be doing. If you guys are able to play in the low dollar games, you should be playing as much volume in the low dollar games as possible. So you shouldn't be playing in the $4 until you have the quarter arcade maxed out, right? If you're playing 20 lineups, you want to be entering that in the 10-cent games, the 25-cent games before moving up, because those lower dollar games are just going to be as soft as possible, and take advantage of them while you could play them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's typical what I do. I still play a couple $100 a day, 100,000 a year in entry fees. When I tell that to my wife, she freaks out. It's just the same couple $1,000s over and over and over. But that's probably more than most people. And most of you in chat here probably play more than most people. We're just looking up at the 0.1% of the folks that provide a lot of our content here, et cetera, that are playing in the 7 figures constantly throughout the entire year. Like I said, I was not joking when I said my 100K. Adam plays that in about 2 weeks of entry fees. I'm not kidding. He probably plays a good 8 to 10 million a year in entry fees would be my guess.
I have no clue. I've never thought about it.
I'm just quickly doing some math here, which makes me just my head explode when I think about what Sean's on, Steve, and Alex are playing in these. That's a lot of money. Oh dear God. Oh dear God. All right. I'm going to upload my lineups here.
I'm going to hit on some questions while I do it. So you can take a second, EMac, do your thing. I'll hit on some of these questions.
Thank you very much.
Run the ship here. Corey Bomber, Tatum and Nurkic or Jaylen Brown and Halliburton on DraftKings. I prefer the Tatum and Nurkic side. So to me, I prefer Tatum to Jaylen Brown, and then Nurkic I think is one of the best overall center options on the slate. Like I said, my second most rostered center behind Onyeka Okongwu. Avi Schreier wants to know Horford or Bagley on FanDuel. Let me check. Horford or Bagley.
I'm leaning towards
that is Horford for me, if just choosing one, but neither of them are really a priority. But Horford for me, certainly a higher priority than Bagley. Guillaume Blias wants to know Winslow and Terrence Mann or Quentin Grimes and Sexton. I prefer the Grimes and Sexton side. By the way, all 4 of those guys, I don't think you can go wrong, but I think Grimes and Sexton is the way to go there. Two of my favorite value plays on the slate for sure. So Grimes and Sexton is the answer for me. I know we saw some questions in the Discord chat as well, which I could hit on. JEW, DKGPP, favorite guy to drop from Alvarado, Grimes, or Winslow. So he's basically asking, of these 4 players, who is my least favorite? Let's see. So I guess it kind of depends also, Jay, how are you asking me this question? Are you asking it from which one am I getting most exposure to? Which one do I think projects the worst? Because there is a little bit of a price difference between the two of them. So I have more exposure to Quentin Grimes than I have to Justice Winslow. But if it was just a 1v1, who do I want more of? The answer is Winslow. So if it's which two project the best and you're just trying to pick 2 out of 3 from that standpoint, it would be Alvarado and Winslow for me. Mr. Moneybags wants to know Joker in the utility with Okongwu on DK. I didn't really play a lot of Jokic today. And I haven't played a whole lot of Jokic, which it pains me. I bet on Jokic to win MVP the last couple of years. I played him on almost every single slate overweight to the field last year. It's just a different scenario this year with Jamal Murray being back and Michael Porter Jr. So I'm not really playing very much Jokic today. I think you're better off going elsewhere, maybe paying up for Steph Curry, for instance, paying up at another position. There's a lot of really good center options today. My favorite, as everybody knows, are Okongwu and Nurkic, but I also think Vooch is a good center. I think Adebayo is a good center. Guys that I'd rather be playing than Jokic overall today. JW wants...
super chat real quick here.
Yep.
DKGPP, Justice Winslow and Terrence Mann, or Quentin Grimes and Sexton.
I already did that one, EMac.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. How are you doing with your lineups?
I'm upload. I'm good.
Okay, cool. I'll hit one more question in the Discord chat because then we're caught up. Then I would have answered all of them. Another one from JEW. He wants to know for a FanDuel GPP, Kyrie Irving or DeMar DeRozan as the last man in. I think Kyrie is a really interesting tournament play over on FanDuel that's going underrepresented. So if we look at the FanDuel ownership projections right now, Kyrie Irving is projected for 3% ownership at $8,600. DeMar DeRozan at $8,400 is projected for 17% ownership. At the end of the year, Kyrie Irving is almost certainly going to be more expensive than DeMar DeRozan, barring any kind of weird injury situations. So the main reason right now that DeRozan picks up more ownership is there's uncertainty with Kyrie Irving, and he's difficult to project because he's not played his full minutes since coming back from his suspension. Now, it wasn't an injury, so there's no reason to think that they're limiting him from, that kind of standpoint. I just think he's getting his conditioning up to par. I think that we're not far away, and it might not even be today that we see Kyrie Irving play his normal 34, 36 minutes. So I like taking shots on Kyrie over on FanDuel, particularly at the ownership difference. 17% for DeRozan versus 3% for Kyrie Irving. I do think it's reasonable that DeRozan projects better, but I just don't think that he outscores Kyrie at a 5-1 clip. So Kyrie in tournaments. EMac, you're back. How'd your lineup uploading go?
It's good. We're ready to rock. We'll make a few tweaks here at 7:30. Got the NHL lineups to adjust. I've got the NBA ones to adjust, but it's good. A nice little day with college football and soccer already. It's been a lot of fun. EMac, or everybody knows EMac is the 8th wonder of the world. I'll take it. That's very, very nice. Caleb McCain says, EMac, you're out of your mind, homie. Hey, I'm out of this world, but thanks for asking. Let's see. Oh, Nurkic on FanDuel, DK, or both? What is your stance on Nurkic since you have a few more minutes to stand for him?
So what were the options?
Basically, is there any site you don't like Nurkic on at this point?
No. Nurkic is underpriced everywhere. I think Nurkic is a very good option. His minutes have not been consistent as of late. He's always been a really good points per minute fantasy producer without Damian Lillard on the court. And we feel better about those minutes today as well because his backup center is out in Drew Eubanks. So I know we just got a question in Discord as well, where Sniffs1234 asked how I feel about Watford on DraftKings. And I don't think Watford is just going to step into the Drew Eubanks role. I think we just see more of Nurkic. So I'm not really on Watford here. I like Nurkic quite a bit.
All right. Let's see. Someone says, all I hear is the grandpa line from the movie Red. Now, I'm trying to remember what that is. I think it's bad move, grandpa. I think one of them says, and I swear Malkovich at some point says, or maybe he says, who you calling old or who you calling grandpa? I forget when he shoots somebody because a lot of people die in that one. EMac would make my year if he did Christmas shows dressed as Santa. Ooh, that's a tall ask. I do have the beard going for me. It's rather white.
You're too groomed though. I feel like you're Santa Claus if he got his shit together a little bit. Like maybe he dyed it a little bit. If he was a little more active, he shaved it. Like that's where you could be a Santa. You're a little too clean for it, EMac.
EMac is Santa Claus if Mrs. Claus left him and he had to get back out there on the bar scene, He was like, I gotta clean myself up. I gotta present myself to these women. That's yeah.
If Mrs. Claus ran one of her marathons and met somebody who was just a tremendous athlete, but or else it's you're too good looking for it EMac.
Avi Shire would like a quick rundown of Miami for FanDuel. He's a super chat here.
Of Miami for FanDuel. So One thing that we got word of not too long ago is that Tyler Hero is expected to play. We don't have all of the Heat news yet because Gabe Vincent is questionable and Dwayne Dedmon is questionable. But overall, this Heat team is not nearly as appealing as it could have been because this could have been a really shorthanded rotation. But of guys that we got listed as questionable, a lot of them are playing now. So Jamal Cain is playing, Haywood Highsmith is playing, Caleb Martin is playing, Tyler Hero now playing. So I don't really think that there's too much that I love from them. And he was asking about a cash game as well. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I wouldn't play any of them in cash.
Okay. Oh, and it just is, I'm scrolling back up. Just he wanted a quick rundown of them. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't play them in cash now that we know that Tyler Hero's in.
All right. EMac Claus is coming to town. EMac is Santa. Santa loves betting on sports. EMac was the 5th Beatle. EMac is a legend. He can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. That would be something to do. That would be something.
That's like one of those Chuck Norris jokes. That's what we should be doing, by the way. We should take Chuck Norris jokes and we should be replacing Chuck Norris with EMac.
Yes. EMac, have you ever rocked a mustache only, the old push broom? Yes, I have. I won't now because my wife would kill me. But no, my brother has a full-on stash only right now for Movember. He has very blue eyes, and his hair he's my younger brother, but he has even wider beard and hair than I do. He does look like Santa if he puts a Santa hat on because he'll grow out a beard. It's not long, but he'll grow out a beard. He really does look like Santa. We like to tease him, and he actually has a Santa suit, and he does stuff for volunteer things for kids. So
you would definitely look like if you shaved your chin hair and just had the mustache, you would look like a strong firefighter.
That's my brother. That's his favorite look too, with the aviator mirrored sunglasses. He's like, yeah, get out of so many tickets this way. He just gets waved through construction sites. He's like, because he drives a big truck, and he's like, they all think I'm one of them off duty. So
people don't know this about EMac, but his tears actually cure cancer. It's just too bad EMac's never cried before.
All right, a couple quick ones here. Avi says Burks over Martin on FanDuel. I'm assuming Caleb Martin? Yeah, Caleb Martin's in. He's playing.
Burks over Martin on FanDuel. So there's a lot more upside in Alec Burks. Here's the problem, though. We don't know what's going on with those other Detroit guys. Like, Burks is a potential best type value play on the slate guy if the injury news breaks his way. The problem is that Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Hamidou Diallo, Corey Joseph are all questionable to play. If all of those guys are in, Burks is a shitty play. If all of those guys are out, Burks looks decent. So it's hard to say. Like, there's just not enough information here. I wouldn't do it for cash games.
All right. Weatherman 7, no emojis here. Actual words, actual letters. Garland and Halliburton, or Steph Curry and Hero on DK. I would go with the former.
I don't really like Hero that much for this slate. It's Curry and Hero if I had to take a side. I'm a little I also don't love that Hero was questionable to play today and looked like he was pretty banged up last game. He's going to play, but it does concern me a little bit. So I take the Curry and Hero side. But I think there are better combinations to make.
All right. We are at our 7:30 here almost. So we're at the lock. So let's have some fun. Caleb McCain, EMac is telling just one big story. He's never finished it yet. Okay, very valid. CW89 says if EMac asks NBA coaches for their injury status, they would only give in and out as an answer because no one would dare say probable, questionable, or doubtful. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's see.
On the 7th day, God rested, EMac took over.
Greg, we need the EMac nickel story again? No, we don't.
We also only have 30 seconds left in the show. So
Sunrise watches EMac get up in the morning. That's good. That's very good. I think we're going to leave it on that one. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, one last one. Yeah, EMac makes a lot of his money selling urine. It's called Red Bull. True story.
It is. That's where Red Bull originally came from. That's why it has so much energy.
EMac doesn't wear a watch. He simply decides what time it is. These are good. These are good.
Bradley, and we can finish with this. Bradley Beal will start today, so that takes any of the Washington guys.
The Washington Wizards are off. the Knicks. EMac is Chuck Norris's dad. There's a good one to end. Thank you, everybody, for following along. This was a long show, but it was a fun show. We enjoyed this on our little holiday here. Hit that like button on the way out. We do appreciate everyone that joins as a subscriber on the YouTube channel. That's also helpful in battling the YouTube algorithm. We started everything off again tomorrow. 9 a.m. You're going to get the NHL strategy show. 10 a.m. You're going to get the NBA strategy show featuring Rinpack, making a rare appearance in the wee hours of the morning. Then you're going to get a couple shows with Greg, including football and the NBA live before lock. NBA starting a little earlier tomorrow with the main lock. And then, of course, the most important show of the day, 11 a.m. college football live before lock with Matt Gajewski and Ben Raza. Rivalry week. This is going to be a good one. With that, you guys can follow Greg over there on Twitter at G. Ehrenberg.
At G. Ehrenberg DFS.
Oh, it is DFS. Okay.
I think everybody follow. I think everybody that watches this follows me at this.
They already follow you. Yes. You can find me at EMac DFS. Greg has way more Twitter followers because he's way more funny than I am on Twitter. And of course, it is Stokastic _com. With that, gamers, good luck.